Fourth, welcome in McElroy and Cubelic in the morning as we get you set for a pretty big Tuesday of college basketball, some college football news, some spring football underway. Some began yesterday. We will get some thoughts on exactly what's happening down in Tuscaloosa, where things are headed for spring football. And Kalen DeBoer updates on some injuries yesterday, GMAC, and some position battles that are going to be taking place. I'm interested in your thoughts just first and foremost of guys that we thought are probably going to be starters, most likely going to be plugged in, but not going to be going through spring football yet. Also, guys that we would probably look at as need the reps, could definitely use the reps, could definitely use some improvement, be it technically, fundamentally. Not that they're going to be threatened to just lose their spot, but guys that we probably feel like could have used spring football. How do you view that? Because Kalen talks about building some depth and other guys getting opportunities, but at the same time, it's a couple of guys that I feel like probably could have used a good spring for what they're going to be able to bring to the table next year.
Well, I'll say this. I'm not sure if I'm really going to press the panic button by guys being out, because there's a lot of veterans, right? So it'd be great to have all hands on deck. That is understood. If everyone was available and everyone was good to go, that'd be amazing. Love to see that progression. Love to see the development had in the spring. I, however, think, though, with where the world is going, competitive depth is harder and harder to come by. So I don't ever think that it's a bad thing to overload your young guys and your developmental players at this point, because you might need them in the fall. So I can kind of see it both ways. I don't know if you see it the same way as I do, but Notre Dame's the prime example of, man, they lost 6 guys to season-ending injuries on defense alone. They had no drop-off. Why? Because their competitive depth was ready to roll.
Yeah, so it's fair. I mean, there's a large portion of me that agrees with that. I look at a Justin Jefferson, never been a full-time starter. Like Deontay Lawson, I'm not worried about at all. No. That doesn't bother me. Damani Jackson's played a lot of football, but not a ton necessarily at Alabama. Same thing with Keon Sabb. You'd like to see those guys just have more opportunity to work together in as close to what you would reference as game-like situations, to just kind of be more on the same page, to get more of that nonverbal communication going, that wherewithal. And listen, Caden Proctor, I think, just needs reps. Like he needs technical fundamental reps, and he needs a lot of them at full speed, and he's not going to get a ton of those this spring. He didn't get a spring ball at all last year. So from a development standpoint, I think he's a guy that needs it. I think he kind of needs it for a conditioning standpoint. Yeah. So that's one that I would look at and say, listen, is it going to make him second team left tackle? No. But could you have seen some real improvement if he did give you a full spring? Probably so.
Probably. The biggest one is probably Justin Jefferson for me. And I think it's because he's so athletic. He's really fast. And just thinking about the linebackers and the struggle that was the linebackers, those first, 7, 8 games. They started playing real well down the stretch, kind of settled in. But those first 7, 8 games were dicey. I mean, you had guys taking wrong steps, guys going the wrong direction. I think it was new system, new communication. Jahad Campbell never really played off the ball for that extended period of time in that role. So I think there were some challenges there, but that was a position of concern last year. They did not play well. They didn't have a great year. Talented guys, but just not a great year. So I think Justin Jefferson, him being a signal caller, a guy that's going to be relied heavily upon, a guy that the staff has a ton of faith in, a ton of excitement about. But it would have been great for him to get extended reps in this spring session. But at the end of the day, it just is what it is. I mean, all eyes are going to be on the quarterback situation. All eyes are going to be on the passing game. And I think the offensive line are probably the 3 areas where I'm going to be spending the most time watching. Damani Jackson being out, does it stink? Yes, for sure. But I'm not that worried about him. Like, he was so banged up last year and still had a great year, So I think it's going to be interesting to see how things go. But it's really more about the offense's development and the offensive line and the quarterback as much as it is anything else this spring.
So I think you may have just answered this, but if I were to give you access to either every practice to be able to be there to watch in person, or offer you the film from every practice, the entire practice of one individual for this Alabama football team, you could even go 2, 3 if you wanted to stretch it just a little bit, that you're just most interested in how they look, how they develop, what they're doing. You just want all the details of what their spring looked like at the end of the day. Who might those players be for the Crimson Tide?
Ooh, I like that question a lot. Number one, it's going to be to the quarterback spot. Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, Keelan Russell. Those are the three that would likely be paying the most attention to. Partly because, one, I love that position, and two, I'm very excited to see what Ty can do. I mean, the staff told me he's the most talented quarterback they had on the roster 2 years ago, and it just never materialized. It just never happened. But they thought he was going to be a guy 2 years ago. So it's taken a little longer, but that's okay. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. This situation feels an awful lot like, and we had a caller, I think, that kind of brought this to our attention. It wasn't an angle that I thought about, but it's something that I've now thought quite a bit about, and it makes a lot of sense. It's a little bit like the Mac Jones, Bryce Young year. 2020, Mac Jones was the third-year guy, had fourth-year guy at that point, had been around for a while, but man, this Bryce Young kid, he's the hot-shot freshman. He's going to be great. Would love to see him on the field at some point, but maybe not yet. Not in front of Mac Jones, who'd waited his turn and had some decent, some okay moments at the end of the 2019 season. So it feels a lot like that. I mean, everyone's excited to see what Keelan can do, but I think Ty is going to have a lot to say about that. We'll see exactly where it goes. But he's one. Another guy that I'm pretty intrigued by is probably Cam Dewberry, transfer over from Texas A&M. Is he going to play left guard? That probably he's going to factor in there. Will he potentially be battling with the freshman for that spot? Potentially, sure. So he's a guy I'll be watching. Wilcom Formby at right tackle is a guy I'll be watching an awful lot of and will be paying close attention to. And then finally, I think just across the board, I want to watch these pass rushers. Like, how is Quay Russaw going to handle an increased load? Who is the guy that's going to be breathing fire? The Nakai Hill Green, the transfer off the ball linebacker from Colorado, would want to watch him. So there's a handful of guys, but mostly new arrivals and a few guys that expect to have increased roles.
It's there's a couple on there that I would agree with you 100%. That right tackle spot, one that feels big. And I don't even know if I would give you an exact name.
Do you have a lean?
I think Formby has to have a real opportunity to take it.
Did he do anything for you last year?
I like his demeanor. I like the way he plays. He's not going to be super athletic, but I think he's a guy that if he shows some improvement technically, fundamentally, I think he could be a good player over there. He's got the great frame for it, and I think he looked a little heavy the way that he played when he did play last year. But I think that kind of goes back to a couple of years ago when some of those guys are still just in that mindset of being 370 and trying to play football. It's just not as easy. We saw that it was probably a little more successful not being that way last year, and you and I were both a fan of it, and then it just didn't end up working out and being as good as we thought it was going to be. I don't even know the name that I would give you, but probably just after maybe the top two receivers, just the rest of those guys, the rest of that group. I don't need to know about Ryan Williams. I don't need to know about Jeremy Bernard, but I kind of just want to see what the rest are going to look like. Who's going to step up? Are there certain individuals that are what they have been portrayed to be, or is the bill of goods of what's been sold by either fans, media, other coaches we've talked to, that they're going to be able to be that guy? I think I'd be probably interested in seeing that, because I don't know exactly what a couple of them look like. We've had people call into this show and tell us that certain individuals in that receiving core are going to be this or going to be that, but you and I hadn't seen them go out there and do it. Right. So that might be just, and I know that's more of a position group answer, but I don't even know the individual to point to say that's going to be the one. But I know what I've got with my number one and my number two. I'd probably be just interested to see what the rest of those are going to look like.
I think if Isaiah Horton's the guy, right? If he's that guy that they expect him to be, that big, physical, reliable wide receiver, they just didn't have that.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I know what he is. I mean, we've at least seen him at Miami.
Yeah, and he's a very productive player. I think he's good, but what kind of role is he? Is he playing Rome Odunze? Is that because that's kind of what I think he's going to be playing.
I don't know if he runs like that though, but
he doesn't run like that, but he doesn't have to. No one expects him to go for 1,500, but if he can give me 750, 800, I feel real good about it for my ex.
How different? How different are he and Jeremy Bernard in your mind?
I think Jerm's a little bit more. I think Jerm's a little bit more of a catch and run guy. I think he's a little bit more gadget-y. I think you have pretty typical wide receiver responsibilities in this room. Ryan Williams, your Z. He's your go-getter. He's a take the top off the defense guy. Anytime I can get him the ball, I'm going to get him the ball. He's that guy. on the downfield stuff. He's a traditional Z, which is a great, great, great position to have a game changer at. I think your typical X is going to be Horton. Very simple. Big, physical. Can go down and dig out the safety on the backside if we're running weak side zone, running weak side stretch. I think he's a guy that's going to be good in blocking on the perimeter as well. I think that's a necessary improvement. If you look at these guys, they gave great effort last year, but they can't throw bubbles if the guys can't block because the guys can't block because they're 185 pounds. I think it's going to be helpful. And I know K-Law was good in that regard, but he wasn't really a traditional outside receiver. He didn't have the length. So I think that Horton's your X, your possession receiver, your Keyshawn Johnson type. And then I think Germ is going to be a slot guy for the most part, can play inside and out, has some position versatility, good on the move. You can definitely hit him off the motion. You can line him up in the backfield some too. So I think Germ's kind of a jack of all trades, and both Ryan Williams and Isaiah Horton are masters of their specific roles.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it still brings to me the question of who's going to be sort of that speed guy, take the top off. I think you might be more capable from a physical perspective with this group than you were a year ago as far as catching the ball down the field. Now, we know what Kendrick Law offered from a physicality standpoint, but that doesn't always help your offense in the passing game.
He just didn't have the length. I mean, he's a great football player, but you need to have a little length. He's just not crazy long.
Right.
Good football player, but just not crazy long.
Yeah, and there are certain people that they'll give you a Rico Scott and say he'll be the deep threat, and he's kind of that guy. And I don't think I've seen enough of him to definitively say yes. That is definitely that guy. It's one thing different about us is we're not going to sit there and tell you definitively with a guy that we haven't really seen much of that he is 100% that guy. It's just Greg and I aren't going to do that.
Great if he was.
Yeah, it might be, could be. We just don't know. We don't know what it's going to look like. Kalen DeBoer, Alabama head coach yesterday, just kind of an update on the injuries as they wrapped up the first day of spring practice.
A couple guys that are limited to and a couple that are full go. Alex Asparuhoff, he'll be out. David Bird will be out. Long snapper Bubba Hampton will be out. Cavante Henry, Damani Jackson, Deontay Lawson, Danny Lewis, Keon Sabb, and then we have some guys that are limited, really just to Indy only and non-contact, and Justin Jefferson, Caden Proctor, James Smith. So a lot of those, pretty much most of those injuries, all just from last season still, and expected. So nothing new there from our standpoint. I know it's probably new for you.
So that's Kalen DeBoer yesterday, just referencing some of those injuries that we mentioned. We talked about Damani Jackson, Keon Sabb, Deontay Lawson, Justin Jefferson, Caden Proctor, kind of some of the more meaningful ones that we think are going to be impactful one way or the other, maybe not as impactful as it might look, not going through spring practice. Also, Kalen DeBoer on just how he would potentially define what a successful spring would look like.
I think it's always about just continue to climb, continue to have progress, challenge the guys out there, either getting better or getting worse. It's individually, that's us collectively, it's your side of the ball. And so I think that's a good starting point is which direction did you go, and I expect a great attitude, energy, effort, all that. It's always going to be that practice one. And I expect that every single practice. But there are some times where a guy, maybe it's coming back from injury or a rep that didn't go as well. We got to pick each other up, and that's to me, it's either you're going up or you're going down, and that's what I'm always going to gauge it by, because in the end goal, it's to be our best and to be your best individually.
And one thing I know that is a little bit concerning, or people are interested in, Greg, is just the leadership on this football team, who it may come from, how it may be different, something I know that you want to see be a little bit different than maybe it was a season ago. Kalen DeBoer just on, who has provided leadership so far for this version of his Alabama football team?
Well, I think it's a bigger group because we do have a lot of guys that are returning. So there's probably 10 guys that decided to come back. And I think all of those guys, along with any of the returners that were significant contributors, I could go on down the list. I just feel like maybe we don't have someone who's just over the top strong and one guy who commands all of it. But I think all of them working together just kind of picking each other up on top of themselves. I think it's in a good spot, and I expect it to be a lot better, but I think it's at a good starting spot at this point of the year. Anything starts over with a team. It doesn't matter if it's the leadership, the installs, the drill work. It all starts over every single season.
So leadership, I know something you're interested in, Greg, as far as how it's going to operate on this team, who it's going to come from on this team. Maybe just I'm trying to think about how to phrase this, how real the leadership is going to be compared to last year.
Authentic leadership, not leadership for the camera. I think that's the key. What are they doing behind closed doors? It's great that you look like a leader when the TV cameras are rolling and you make sure that everybody sees you. Everybody sees what you're doing all the time, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's a little bit different, but I think authentic leadership, when you're doing stuff like that and then behind the scenes you're making demands, that's not good. And I think that's going to be a disconnect, and the players aren't going to follow necessarily guys that aren't authentic. So I think finding authenticity is important. I think this group will have that. It does seem like the guys that came back, and the mission is pretty simple. I mean, if you look at some of when they were putting out their graphics of returning, this was months ago, but you look at their graphics as returning, I mean, the message is simple. Like, we want to come back because we have hopes of chasing a championship. We came here to win a championship. We haven't done that yet. We now believe that we can do it with this group. We're coming back for the right reasons. So I think there's a lot of positive momentum heading into this season, not just with the addition of Grubb, but with some of the guys, the good guys that have decided to return, and the opportunity that they have together to go chase one. Because I do think ego's got in the way the last couple of years.
No doubt about it. So we'll continue talking Alabama spring on the other side. You'll have to wait for a little more conversation on that. One thing you never have to wait for, Greg, is your dental care.
That's because Family Care Dental has you taken care of. They're the urgent care office where you can be seen the same day. They have 5 locations to make it easy on you: Hoover, Fultondale, Homewood, Alabaster, and now open in Trussville as well. Go see Family Care Dental today. They can get you in for routine cleaning. They can get you in for emergency care. You name it, they got it. It's Family Dental. They can also see you on Fridays and Saturdays. So give them a call at 874-9605. That's Family Dental, 874-9605.
All right, back to talk more Alabama spring, some other spring football around college football. We'll discuss it next right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Sticking with the spring football conversation at 7:21, Tuesday, March 4th on Jocks 94.5. Andy Bertram will join us at 8 a.m. Only guest that we have for you today, so you want to get in, you can do so, 800-239-9569. You can also text into the show, 205-834-9450. We have had the conversation about spring football games, where that's going, where that's headed, what that might look like. We had a little bit of a conversation about it yesterday. I've seen some folks kind of tweeting about it, talking about it. It's an interesting conversation because a lot of people, Greg, are right on board with, yeah, why would you do that? I don't think it's a big deal. I don't understand it. But we do also have, before we get into an actual conversation of is it good, is it bad? With a couple of teams starting spring football yesterday, Samford started yesterday, Alabama, Coastal Carolina, Kennesaw State, Louisville, Miami, Rice, Texas State, Virginia. More slated to start today. Have you seen what Oklahoma has referenced their, I guess I'll say spring activities as for this upcoming season?
No. What is it?
Well, we've seen like the spring showcase that some people are going to do. They don't necessarily reference it as exactly what that's going to look like, what that's going to be. Oklahoma apparently is going to try to get even more creative after they cancel their spring game on April the 12th. They're going to host a Crimson Combine. Players and coaches will participate in combine-style drills/challenges. Also, on-field fan engagement activities, including an autograph session.
Oh, that sounds like engagement.
I say just hand out pads and let people try to score from the 5 against Danny Stutzman one-on-one.
I like that play. That to me feels like the right play.
They're literally called Oklahoma. Why not have fans participate in Oklahoma drill?
I'm for it. Have at it. Sign a waiver, get in there, and get destroyed. Basically, pros versus Joes, Oklahoma style. Here's my biggest. I have two big questions about where we're headed with this. I do think that we are allowing the possibility of a player or two to transfer who was likely to transfer anyway. Now, let's just be honest. If a guy's sitting there thinking about leaving your program because he had a good spring game, well, isn't he probably thinking about it anyway? Just to a certain extent. So I think it's a massive overreaction to that. If you don't want to have one, don't have one. I get it. But I've slated that I don't understand from a network perspective. And I don't know what the allow or disallow or control that they would have of it, but just the amount of inventory that's going to disappear with some of these, that's very surprising to me. I think that's needed. I think it's desired. I think it's actually good, something that can be replayed through the entire summer. But on the flip side of that, Greg, what do we have some of these athletic directors doing right now? What do we have some of these collectives doing right now? What do we have some presidents of schools doing, head coaches of schools doing? They're sitting there saying, we need more money.
Yeah.
You got to help us. So we're begging the fans for more money. We're begging the fans to do more. We're begging the fans to pitch in more, but we're taking something away from the fans. And you can't tell me that the fans don't enjoy it because Alabama's had 100,000 people at their spring game before and had a pretty good crowd consecutively for a decade plus of over 30, 40,000.
Yep.
So you're telling me that if, let's just say, a good number of 40,000, and we get these attendance numbers every year, it's this giant competition. I think Auburn did pretty good last year. Bama's done good most years. Oklahoma's a team that's usually up there. Ohio State's usually up there. So you get 40,000, give or take. Maybe it's 30, maybe it's 60, that show up on your campus. They're not going to buy concessions. They're not going over to the bookstore or the apparel shop on campus, which some of that could be NIL related, and they're not spending money there. It's not going to be free to all fans everywhere. We know some of these are charging $3, $4, $5, $10 to get in. Another way to generate revenue. I mean, hell, have one of those big clear acrylic boxes when you walk in that just says NIL on it.
And just
let Jim Bob slip a 20 in there. That's a head start towards a new left tackle. I don't, if everything is about generating more and needing more revenue and begging fans for more money, why are you taking something away from the fans? And I'm sorry, but, sitting there and watching assistant coach B, Bill Bedenbaugh go through the bag drills on the field, I don't know how many people are paying NIL money to come see that.
No, got to see it. Very important.
Listen, I'd love to laugh at it and make fun of it and send Bill a text about it, but I don't think the fans are lining up for that. It's just it feels a little bit backwards, like you're almost working against yourselves here. Like, hey, please help us, please give us more, please do more, but you're also essentially saying, yeah, don't waste your time coming to campus and spending more money here on our guys.
Well, I think it's funny to me because we're sitting there. You bring up a really good point. This is a great opportunity for fan engagement. If you want fans to feel more comfortable spending more money, I'm not saying you can give it for free. To give the spring game away for free. I'm fine with that. No, you don't need to pay anything. It's first come, first serve. The most, rabid fans will get the best seats. When you walk in the door, you get the best seat. That's fine. You got there early. You deserve it. But it increases fan engagement. Like, oh, man, I really enjoyed watching, Johnny left tackle play in the spring game. I've never seen him play before. He doesn't get to play in the fall, but man, it was really fun to watch him play. I like his story. I'm going to contribute to NIL because it might help Johnny left tackle. I just think it helps with fan engagement. And I don't care about – it's just amazing to me how, hey, it's fine. Like, we really don't want to lose our backup right tackle. But you know what we really – that backup right tackle is more important than – the 100,000 kids, 100,000 fans and kids and children and all those people that would pack the stadium to come watch and support your team? What's more important? The third string will linebacker or the 6-year-old kid who's never gone to a Bama game that might go and be in Bryant-Denny for the first time on April 12th? What's more important?
Yeah.
I personally think the kid that's 6 years old is more important. Because you could potentially develop a lifelong fan. Like, what are businesses always talking about? Is it harder to retain or is it harder to go and get new business? It's much harder to go and get new business, right? Well, guess what? That 6-year-old might have 80 years of buying Alabama memorabilia and paraphernalia because he loves the Tide because his granddad took him to an 8A game in 2025.
It's not often you see adults, even teenagers, college kids, change strong allegiances to teams that they root for.
No.
I mean, I've done it in my lifetime. I'm not going to say it never happens. We have an employee here at the station that does it on an almost daily basis. But
he's also not an adult.
Well, I guess a fair statement. But very rarely do you see someone who grew up a fan of something and then at some point say, you know what? No, go in another direction there. I'm not going to do that anymore. So, yeah. And I imagine that's a very difficult balance right now for the administration portion of collegiate athletics because they need a lot right this second. But there is a responsibility of trying to build a fan base for forever, for 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 30 years from now. But I can also imagine that if you're an athletic director, you're John Cohen right now, you're probably struggling with being too concerned about a decade from now with all the challenges that are present today and tomorrow. You got to manage those first and take care of those first. But I'm with you. That I've always respected coaches that have referenced things that way. Like we need to make this kid a fan forever. We want this kid to want to come to Alabama or Florida or Tennessee. Right. Because not a lot of coaches reference things that way and aren't out there trying to build fans for the rest of their lives. It's one thing that I think Bruce Pearl does a good job. He's like, he wants to build Auburn fans for 50 years from now. But not all coaches look at it that way. And I imagine from an administrative standpoint, it's even more difficult to look at it that way right now.
Completely. And let's take it one step further. Okay, Bruce Pearl is a unique personality. I think a lot of coaches are just worried about today, which I'm fine with. I don't expect the coaches to have this foresight. I really don't. It's not really about them. But guess what? Back in your day, Cole, when you were a kid going to Legion Field, tickets didn't cost a lot of money. It was not prohibitive. You didn't have to be wealthy to go to games. Like you could go and enjoy a college football game for pennies on the dollar. Now, we are increasingly getting to a point in college athletics where only the wealthy can consume the game in the fall. especially if we start getting rid of home games. And now we're at 10 games in the regular season, and you don't have that game against Western Carolina. I mean, and the games are only against Tennessee, LSU, Florida, and Auburn. And those are the only games that are played in Bryant-Denny. Guess what? My dad might not be able to afford to take me to those games. Probably can't in most cases, to be completely honest. So we are pricing out the fan. What has the spring game always been about? Access. You can go. Anyone can go. It's non-prohibitive. It costs nothing. All it costs is your time and commitment on a Saturday in April. So I think that we got to be real careful, man, because a lot of the people, while the experience is tremendous on television, it's great. There's nothing better than being in the stadium as a college football fan. Nothing better. And people ask me all the time, why are you a Dodger fan? Because my dad took me to the Dodger games when I was 5 years old, and we went probably 10 times a summer on Friday nights. And I was 5 years old. And 30 years later, here I am still buying Dodgers paraphernalia for my sons that I'm hoping will be Dodger fans with me for the next 50 years of my life. So I think it's a dangerous spot to be in. Going to the game is the best experience. And if you're not allowing people access in the fall because it's too expensive, then you need to offer up other solutions for kids to be able to go and for families to be able to go in the spring. And that's not right now a high priority. And I get that, but man, we need to be careful down the road.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple folks tweeting in at Mac and Q. You can be a part of the show there. You want to hit us up on the Buyers Right hotline, 800-239-9569. Be a part of this discussion. Jolly tweets in, I'm not losing sleep over spring games not being a thing. Completely neutral. But this fan fest, carnival-esque events, just stop it. Silliness. As far as spring games for NIL, charge for admission. Nothing crazy. $10, kids get in free. There's going to be creativity around it. It's just going to be who potentially takes advantage of it. Stephen Isbell tweets in a decent thought. Just a theory, but I think the players told coach or someone they didn't want to do a spring game. Coach and AD decided at best to cancel it and be the bad guy so as not to potentially hurt NIL contributions. That might be the case, but we're up to talking about 20, 30 schools now. I mean, I don't think they all got together at the round table and said, hey, is everybody willing to do this if we do it? Yeah, sure. Shut them all down. The Unhipster tweets in, Galette's and, is it Soup Store?
Yeah.
Are always packed on 8A in Tuscaloosa. The old running of the Gumps was classic. Need to have those games. There are people that look forward to it for different reasons and people that wanted to be a part of it for different reasons. A lot of them, what you just mentioned, Greg, as the ease and efficiency of not having to pay $50, $25 for parking, not having to park, 2 miles away from campus, being able to get out of there without, enough traffic to where it costs you your entire day.
Yeah.
And you have younger kids and it's a little more feasible to be able to do that. And maybe not even just from the price perspective but just the efficiency of which you can get in and out because it's not exactly the same as a game day.
Yeah. And if I wasn't working 8A game, I've worked 8A game, gosh, a million times, right? I mean, I think I've done half of them in the last 10 years. It feels like it. I've done a bunch of them. If I had kids and I wasn't working, guess what I'd do? Spring game, baseball game, spring game, softball game. Like we'd combine it. We'd make it a big family outing in Tuscaloosa. I don't get enough opportunities to do that with my kids. So I would love that. But it's unfortunate that's not going to happen, All
right, quickly going to go to Brandon and Coleman and just describe his thoughts on moving some of these spring games out, not being a real thing anymore. Brandon, what's on your mind?
Yeah, so I had a thought, so instead of, obviously doing away with the spring game altogether, why can't they just, move it towards, the beginning of the season next year? Because it's after the transfer portal. You ain't got to worry about none of that. I just wanted y'all's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think with spring practice, and see, this is where the whole injuries in spring practice versus spring game, people get a little bit confused. Not that you did, but when people discuss it and say you can't have a spring game, people are going to get hurt. All of spring practice has been moved up to give a bigger window for if guys did get hurt to be able to recover and be ready for fall. So if anything, these things are going to be moved up earlier, spring game and all of spring practices. I kind of like the idea of, from a roster standpoint, where you would be. But I don't think these coaches want anything to be any later than they are now, because what I believe happened over time is they went and looked through all these injuries. All right, rotator cuff, ACL, torn meniscus, high ankle sprain, sprained PCL, whatever you can have, whatever you can get, torn pec, all these like the semi-common injuries in football. All right, what's our recovery time? And there was a large classification of those that fell into the 2 to 4 month range. Like you tear an ACL in the spring, you're probably not going in the fall. Maybe you come back a little bit later, but you have something that just like you need to go in and clean up a torn meniscus. Like those guys can be back and be ready. High ankle sprain, you can be back and be ready. You push that back further, that's fewer guys that are going to be able to be back and be ready. And a lot of these guys are being held out because they don't want to risk having something else done to the injury that happened in the season and then also being out for the beginning of next season. So I understand the idea. I think it's a good one. It's just because of where we are from an injury standpoint, not just the game, but practices. Because if Greg and I have told you on air, we saw a lot more guys in the spring get hurt in practices than in the game. But people are still going to tell you can't have a game, you're going to get hurt. It's just not real. The fear of injuries in the spring game is not a real thing. It's not why this is happening. It just isn't.
No.
But it's a good thought. 800-239-9569. You want to get in, you can do that on the other side of the break next on Mac and Cube in the morning. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 7:41, Tuesday, March the 4th, right here on Jocks 94.5. 800-239-9569. You want to get in. talk spring football games. What does it need to look like? Will you be attending? What do you want to attend? What do you want to see? Hastings has been patient through the break. Wants to chime in on the Buyers Right hotline. Welcome in, Hastings.
Yeah, hey guys. One of the things that I look at from I'll start off with the injury standpoint. Like, a lot of these injuries that are severe are really non-contact. You can get injured in summer workouts with some of that as easily as you could practicing or in the spring game. So I don't really like that argument, because I feel like if injuries are going to happen, they are going to happen. I know you're putting yourself at a little bit more risk, but from a pure fan perspective, I think that you're also missing out on an opportunity for the excitement. The last thing I remember as an Alabama fan is watching an abysmal showing against Michigan and sitting there just waiting on the spring game to be like, all right, well, what do we have to look forward to? We have a new quarterback that's going to be coming. You really build excitement around it. It gives me a reason to call in, bother you guys for like 10 minutes. But the other thing that I would look at too is, if I'm a player, I would be kind of frustrated that I am not getting an opportunity for more NIL deals even within the school. Because, like, if you look at the Ajayi Hall game from the spring day, and I mean, I know we all have our different opinions on him, but who's to say that he wouldn't have made more money at Alabama if he would have had that showing through the summer in order to get more NIL deals through the community towards him specifically? So as a player, I'd be very frustrated, because if you're going to transfer, you usually see how that's going to line up in spring practice, regardless of what reps that you are getting. And I think that, not every coach, and as time will tell, if somebody has a good spring game, doesn't mean that you're going to light it up or that you're a good player or a good teammate. It may just be, hey, you had that kind of day. You were going with some, limited base defense looks, and you had an opportunity, but it could be valuable for the players as well. And as a fan, it just gives you more excitement towards the season. And Cole, you referenced that you watch it, you can have it on all summer. I mean, that is part of what I do in the summer. You get to the dog days of summer and silly season, and you're sitting there and you're like, what am I going to do? Well, I can tell you I'm not watching the Michigan Bowl game this year. I'd rather watch the A-Day game and be excited about the new players and see what opportunities they have. But I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts on, like, maybe what players think, because aren't they missing out on a good NIL opportunity as well? So, anyways, appreciate y'all taking my call. Thanks, guys.
I think potentially, Hastings, anytime you're able to get in front of a camera or get in front of more people and display your skill set, that gives you opportunities to better your, I guess we'll say, brand, even though there's a lot of ways that's utilized that I think we don't appreciate or like in today's day and age. But that's a possibility. It's real. I do think from an NIL perspective, if those coaches see the value of said player, they would have already addressed it, and they would have already said, let's take care of this guy. Let's make sure he's happy. Let's get him what he needs, Greg. But I just look at it as, I do think there are a lot of players in today's college football that probably are happy they're not going to have it just because they don't want to go out there and do it. But at the same time, it's another game-like situation. It's another way to mimic what things are going to look like in the fall, and you're removing that. So it goes further to that developmental portion of the game that we talk about as lacking, and that maybe is not necessarily needed or is needed, but it's not going to be there. And that's just one more aspect of it that's going to be subtracted.
Well, what I would say is that there are still some throwbacks that love playing and love competing. I do think those guys are harder to find now. I think guys play because it's how they support a family. I think guys play because that's their job. I think playing for the genuine love is a little bit fewer and farther between. I don't think it's totally gone, but like, I loved playing. Like, I think, Cole, you loved playing, but when money comes in, the second I became a professional and I started playing for free, it became a lot less fun. I'm just going to be completely honest. Like, I did not enjoy playing the game that I played my whole life for fun and for free the second I got to the NFL. And I think these guys have already had that experience. That's an unfortunate thing, but there's not a lot that we can do about it. It just, the fun of the game gets taken out and it becomes a business. And you're saying, hang on, I'm playing this one for free? Like, why would I play this one for free when I'm playing the ones in the fall for a bunch of money?
Yeah.
And I think that's an unfortunate thing. It's where we've gone. It's a byproduct.
Yeah, it is. It's something that's going to change and going to be just a little bit different. So, and a lot of people want different things. Some people say spring game doesn't matter at all. Some people say it's not something that they look forward to, that they care about. A lot of people are interested in it, do want more in the spring, either for fan engagement to go be a part of, or just to see the team, have different ways to look at what the team is. There are a lot of different ways that you could go about doing some of this. And I'm beginning to wonder if, kind of like what we had in on Twitter just a little bit earlier of, doing some of these bag drills or combine drills or different things like, carnival games. Is that going to actually push some fans away and just say, you know what, I'm completely out now. That's not what I'm signed up for. I wanted a little bit of football. We're not getting it. Like, goodbye. You're my team. I love you, but not tuning in for this. Don't want any part of it. And I have a feeling that we're going to look back on this in, 10, 20 years and just feel like it was a massive overreaction to one or two people thinking that they were going to lose a player or two because they had a good spring game. I mean, and maybe this will be genius roster management 10 years from now. I don't know. But one way or the other, Greg, it feels like a massive overreaction to me right now.
I understand it. If the reasoning is truly because they're worried about losing a guy, I think that's dumb. Honestly. But I don't really think that's why they're doing it.
Well, you had Matt Rule basically say that's what it was.
I know, but I don't believe him. You know what I mean? And it's not, I think he's trying to be a player's coach. Players don't want to play. I'm not going to make them. But he can't sit there and say that because the fan base is going to say, hang on a second. You're letting the players dictate when you practice and when you play?
Okay, if you say that, okay, we're going to push that to the other side. If you say that, I have to counter it with something else, okay? I have to counter what you're talking about there with another aspect of what a head coach has to do, has to manage, has to deal with. If you are less than 10 years from retirement, you have a lot to manage and a lot to worry about. But our friend Tad Hill can help you with that. And I'm going to give you some extra added value here on Jocks, introduce you to our friend and wealth advisor, Tad Hill, your trusted retirement planning partner. Tad is the co-host of the Retire with Freedom radio and TV shows in Birmingham and Huntsville, also been designated by Forbes as the #1 financial securities professional in the state of Alabama multiple years running. Tad, tell us what you have today.
Thanks, Cole. What I'd like to do today is talk about something that none of us really like to think about, which is market volatility. And particularly as you near retirement, it's very important that you're not overexposed to risk with too much of your investment money, because for most of you, you're going to need that money to live on. If you've got too much risk in your investments and we go through a big market downturn, and you're pulling money out at the same time, now you're having to sell when markets are down to pay your bills. That's called sequence of returns risk. That and the strategies on how to insulate you from that, we cover in our Retire with Freedom course that we do at our office on Valley Dale Road. If you would like to attend the next course, we cover that and many other strategies for retirement planning. Text JOCKS at 205-988-0006, 205-988-0006.
This is a paid placement. Investment advisory services are made available through AE Wealth Management. For more information about Forbes rankings, visit Forbes.com.
McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, talking spring football games. Where do we need to go? What does it need to look like? 7:52, Tuesday, March the 4th. Greg, you made a decent point there a moment ago, just kind of referencing that you think Matt Rule, his players have come in and said, we don't want to do a spring game. We don't want to play in that.
Yes.
And that you obviously don't want to paint the picture to your fans that, hey, we're allowing our players to dictate what we're going to do and where we're going to go and how we're going to run things, which is fair. I get that. Where does that stop then?
Yeah.
Because what if said players come to you and say, we don't want to practice in full pads today, coach?
Well, I mean, I think that's a little different. Like, hey, guess what? You're practicing. You don't want to practice, you're not playing. And by the way,
yeah, we told you we
choice.
don't want to play, and you made us not play. You've canceled the game. So we appreciate
true.
that.
That is true. You canceled the game, but that was a game with full tackle. I think players understand there is a little bit of a point to, hey, I need to practice. I need to get better. What I don't need is to go out and show the world what I can do. Like I don't need that. I run the risk of getting exposed. What if I go out and play bad? What if I go out and have an awful day? Like, for instance, let's paint the picture. Let's hope it doesn't happen. But what if Jackson Arnold goes out the Auburn spring game and throws 4 picks?
I would say that could end up being a good thing because then you realize you need to be coached harder and need to work harder, need to practice more.
I mean, that's a great
maybe actually go out there and practice full speed a little bit more to have an idea what it's going to look like. Might even help you to put some fans in the stands. Like maybe not have the coaches right behind you every snap.
I personally love your approach. I just don't think it's likely to be useful. You know that it's going to come back, and it's going to make life very difficult over the summer for that kid that's still trying to learn a new offense. And I know that the coaches can kind of tweak it and make it a little easier. And, hey, if I want the defense to look good, I can do this. If I want the offense to look good, I can do this. I can be like Kirby and just say, hey, we're blitzing every snap. Like, who cares? Like, I mean, well, I can be I forget who did it a couple years ago. I could take the black jerseys off the quarterbacks and go live. Like, we can do all that. That's all. That all can be done. But at the same time, it's not necessarily the best from a player standpoint if you go out there and have a bad day. So I think by canceling it, you're also kind of protecting the players because they have big deals. And what did Dylan Raiola for Nebraska decide? Yeah, I go out there and throw 4 picks. All of a sudden, all the goodwill that was built up throughout his freshman year is now gone. I think that's something to be concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, it's feasible. I get it. I
hope it's not the case. But
I don't. Yeah, I don't want it to be the case at all. But I think we all realize that it potentially could be. So, where this goes next, I don't think a lot of us have any idea where it ends up and how it looks. But and I do think someone's going to counter this. Someone's going to come back and say, "Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do this." Like right now. If you're a college coach and you step out and say, you know what, by God, we're doing this for the fans. We love our fans. We like you guys. We're going to put on for our city. Come in here and check out what we can do. Our players are going to play. And you know what? If Rico Suave doesn't want to go at wide receiver, he can sit out. Who cares? He can sit over there and he can watch his teammates. Good for him. And then they're going to say, we're going to give you a chance to show what you can do. NIL, no NIL, transfer, no transfer. Come out here and show the cameras what you got. Kind of like Gusty Goulas in the Gusty Goulas group. They want to show you what they've got, inventory that they know is coming available. They've served more than 3,000 home buyers and sellers in the Birmingham area, so they know what's coming up. They know how to get rid of your house. They know how to get top dollar for it. Brokered by eXp Realty. 830 plus 5-star Google reviews. Call 205-542-1996 today or go to GustyGoulasGroup.com. Google it and just see what people are saying about the Gusty Goulas Group. You can trust their aggressive and proven selling system. They've got what it takes to get rid of your home, get top dollar, and get you into your dream home. 205-542-1996 or GustyGoulasGroup.com today and start packing. Andy Burcham recaps Auburn at Kentucky next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Hour number 2 underway. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Glad you're with us. Have not spent a lot of time talking college basketball yet today, as we have multiple conference tournaments that start today. Yes, that is correct. Conference tournaments will begin today. You've got the Horizon League. You've got the Patriot League, and the Sun Belt begins today. Coastal Carolina, Southern Miss, and ULM in Louisiana. Now, interestingly enough, they're in the Sun Belt when you're talking about the stretch that those teams may be facing to potentially go win the Sun Belt title. If you are Southern Miss or Coastal Carolina, here's what you're looking at, Greg. Today, obviously, you play one another. Tomorrow, Georgia Southern. Thursday, Georgia State. Friday, Marshall. Saturday, Arkansas State. Sunday, South Alabama. Monday night title game. Good luck in that.
You don't like the chances?
I like the chances of completely emptying the tank, if that's at all possible, to even make the championship game, much less go out there and win it. So, but the SEC champions are also set for the regular season. That will be the Auburn Tigers. Andy Burcham on the call for Auburn at Kentucky on Saturday. He joins us each and every week thanks to our friends at Craneworks.
Lift it, load it, grade it, grind it, move it, haul it, rig it, dig it, Craneworks, Rentalworks, yeah! The big dog's got it.
The voice of the Auburn Tigers, Andy Burcham, on Mac and Cube in the morning is brought to you by Craneworks. Lifted, buy and rented, the big dog's got it. Now, Andy Burcham.
Andy, always great to have you in on a Tuesday. It was great to see you Saturday. Always good to catch up a little bit. And it was an interesting win for Auburn, a good win, a confident win, and one that I think maybe builds confidence in different ways for this team heading into March.
Yeah, it was, because it wasn't the typical guys that went out and did the job. I mean, Janai Broome had, I think for Janai, what you would consider an off day. But it was Miles Kelly on Saturday that did the job with 30 points and 9 threes. It was Tahad Pettiford, and we've seen Tahad have big ball games, but he had to step up for Auburn because Denver Jones was out with an ankle injury in that game, and he played the entire second half and scored 20 points for Auburn and did not have a turnover at point guard in the entire second half. So it was a huge day, I thought, for Auburn. It was a big day for Auburn to win in Lexington. It was a big day for Auburn to win a share of an SEC championship. And by the time Auburn landed at Auburn University Regional Airport and got in the bus and was heading to Toomer's Corner, the Tennessee-Alabama game was ending. And by the time Auburn got to Toomer's Corner, not only was Auburn had clinched a share of the SEC championship, but was the outright SEC champion. So it was quite a few hours for Auburn on Saturday in many, many regards.
I have no idea what game you just referenced. The other one that you had said there. I didn't watch it.
Sorry about that, Greg.
No, I've never been a part of anything so painful, but we can move on. Glad that you guys are able to get it done. I know Janai did not have his best stuff by any stretch, maybe the worst game of the year like you referenced. I don't personally think that has a huge impact on the Naismith or the Wooden or whatever award he's going to be potentially chasing. But, I mean, he's very much in the mix. He's the betting favorite for the most coveted individual award in college basketball. Does Saturday's performance have an impact negatively on that, or is it more a bigger picture award?
I think it's more of a bigger – well, listen, I hope it's more of a bigger picture award for Janai's sake. I don't vote in it, so I don't know, how it affects him at this point, because Cooper Flagg continues to have a big season for Duke. And that's a really good Duke team, and obviously he's a fabulous player. And, likelihood is going to be the number one pick in the NBA draft coming up in June. So it could have a factor. And I'm sure that Janai wants to win that award, as anyone would. But he celebrated with his team on Saturday. He celebrated what Miles Kelly did in that game, and he celebrated what Tahad Pettiford did in that game. And he celebrated with his team an SEC championship and celebrated Auburn's first win in Lexington since 1988. I think it shows you the character of the young man. And, listen, he had kind of an average game on Saturday. And they did a nice job taking him out of the game. And they're big on the inside. And I think one of their keys was, let's take Janai Broome out of the game Well, the problem was Miles Kelly had his best game as an Auburn Tiger. And Jahad Pettiford had another huge game for Auburn, especially coming on the road as a true freshman for Auburn on Saturday. And I think it just shows you that this team is not just Janai Broome. It is much more than that. And in years past, had a team taken Janai Broome out of a ball game, Auburn would have been in a lot of trouble, especially on the road at Kentucky, where Auburn hadn't won since 1988. That's the difference with this ball club this year, because it's not just Janai Broome that can win ball games for you.
Andy Burcham joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline on the call for Auburn at Kentucky. First win in Lexington since 1988 for the Tigers. And I'm interested in your thoughts on Amari Williams going in and coming out. I've gotten to see Kentucky a few times this year. I knew he was a solid big. I don't know, maybe I knew just his actual size until I saw him in person. And I had no idea how fluid he was. I didn't know he had the handles. I didn't know the passing prowess. And then defensively, what he did to Janai Broome was incredible, because when they switched defenders and he was out, it was right back to Broome putting his back to the basket and literally just manhandling whoever was trying to defend him to the goal. That didn't happen against Williams. Did you guys kind of know that he was going to be that much of a problem on both ends of the floor going into this game?
I certainly did from an offensive standpoint, because going into the game, he was number 2 for Kentucky in assists. He was averaging 4 assists per game, which, the only other big that I know that does that is Janai Broome, that averages about 4 assists per ball game. He leads Auburn in assists, and Amari Williams is second on Kentucky's team in assists. I mean, how many times in that game did we see him get a rebound and bring the ball up the floor himself? At 7 foot, bringing the ball up the floor himself on Saturday. That's a good player. I mean, he's going to be playing somewhere, whether it's in the NBA or the G League or perhaps overseas. I don't know. But that's a good, big, fluid player that can play some defense as well, as we saw what he did with Janai in the ball game on Saturday. And I fully expect this tonight, guys. As Auburn plays the late game at Texas A&M, I expect to see Janai Broome bounce back and have the kind of game that we've seen Janai have almost game in and game out all season long.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if he didn't have a big bounce back performance tonight for sure. Looking at the start again, I feel like it's rinse and repeat. It's every single time. We were talking about Auburn on Monday or Tuesday from the previous week. It's like, well, man, they started like gangbusters again. I think they were up 10 or 15 or 13 or 15 there in the first half. Had a 12-0 run. I mean, it's like every single week. What are they doing in the days or the hours leading up to tip-off that allows them to just jump on teams so quick in the game?
And I think we see it. I think we notice it even more so on the road than we do at home. I think this team has 9 seniors that play game in and game out. I think at times we overlook that this team is a veteran team. Yeah, there are the Jahad Pettifords of the world that are playing and playing well for Auburn. But Denver Jones is a senior. Miles Kelly is a senior. Chad Baker-Mazar is a senior. Janai Broome's a senior. Dylan Cardwell has his degree, so does Janai Broome. I mean, all 5 of Auburn's starters are seniors. And in this day and age of players leaving early, players transferring, you don't see this very often. And then you bring a guy like Chaney Johnson off the bench that has already graduated. He and Janai Broome graduated the same day that they won against Ohio State in Atlanta. They literally came back to Auburn and went to the arena and graduated when they got back in time to do that. So I think the fact that this team is a veteran squad, and that's a good thing, by the way, I think that is one thing that allows this team to go on the road and do what it has done this season. And it has so many different ways of scoring. And we saw that on Saturday. Okay, so Kentucky did a nice job of taking Janai Broome and taking him out of the game early. Well, Miles Kelly started just was crazy good from the outside in that game. He banked in back-to-back threes at one point.
Andy, I'm going to stop you right there real quick. I hate to interrupt. That was going to be my next question for you. I asked Richard Hendricks. I was with a former basketball player that played at Auburn on Saturday. Everyone has told me absolutely not. Have you ever in your life seen 2 perimeter shots consecutively banked in, specifically from opposite ends of the wing?
No, I haven't. I don't. If I have, I don't recall it at this point. But he was. We had him on the post game. We had him on the post game Saturday, And I said, did you have any inkling? And I like to ask this question of guys in any sport that have extraordinary games. I said, did you have any inkling of the day that you were going to have? And remember, that was the early game. So Auburn shot at Rupp Arena Friday night. And he said, when we went through shoot around and I started shooting, and he said, I loved the rims at Rupp. Well, the rims had nothing to do with those back-to-back bank shots, to be sure. But he was in the zone, you know, and I don't know what that feels like. You guys probably do. He was just in an incredible zone, and I hope we get to see it again soon out of Miles Kelly. But no, I've never seen back-to-backs like that.
I'm not sure you've seen a quicker trigger than he had in that game either. I mean, there were a couple possessions when it was just he was going to get it up and it was going to happen. It didn't matter what was happening defensively or where he was on the floor. He was going to fire that thing. So go ahead.
And from range as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and from range as well. It wasn't just right on top of the three-point line either.
I had the chance to speak to somebody kind of with the team after the game, and the comment was made that this could be a really good thing because now Janai gets a little pressure off his back. He doesn't go into the tournament or into the SEC tournament thinking he has to be the guy to do everything. How real do you think that is for this basketball team heading to the postseason?
I don't think it changes one bit with the fact that this team has clinched the share of the SEC, or has clinched the championship now. I don't think it changes tonight's game. It certainly doesn't change Saturday's game with Alabama coming into town. And I don't think it changes Auburn's approach going into the SEC tournament. What Auburn knows now is it will play the first game on day 3 of the tournament on Friday. It does not play Wednesday. It does not play on Thursday. It will play the first game of the day on Friday. And right now, I think what Auburn is looking at doing is making history at Auburn. It's already clinched the SEC championship. It wants to finish with the best record in school history in the SEC. It wants to finish as the number 1 seed overall in the NCAA tournament. It wants to sew up that bid that will send them back to Rupp Arena to play as the overall number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament and play at Rupp Arena and then in Atlanta and then San Antonio, Texas. So while they have celebrated an SEC championship, and they did it briefly with 2 huge games left. Listen, guys, Auburn is 2-5 in its last 7 games against Texas A&M. This is a tough matchup for Auburn. It has been for years. And then you have the arch rival coming in on Saturday. You have Alabama coming in on Saturday. And if you don't think this Auburn team wants to sweep Alabama, you're mistaken. So there is so much for this team to play for. And as far as Janai is concerned, listen, I'm sure that Janai wants to win National Player of the Year. Anyone would. But he is part of a team that is out to make history right now. And listen, I mean, if he wins that National Player of the Year award, then he makes history for Auburn. He is part of that. So there is just so much more for this Auburn team to play for, starting tonight here in College Station, Texas.
I don't think there's any doubt, Andy. We appreciate the time. Give us specifically this matchup tonight. What may be a tad problematic? What do Auburn fans need to be paying close attention to that needs to assure take place for the Tigers to get a win?
Well, Buzz Williams' teams are just extraordinarily tough defensively. And the scheme that they run it's just tough for teams to play. I think Auburn is a bigger team, especially on the inside, and that bodes well for a guy like Janai Broome and Dylan Cardwell and Shaney Johnson coming off the bench tonight. Be interested to see how much Denver Jones plays tonight. He suffered that injured ankle in the first half on Saturday. He went through practice yesterday. He is here in College Station. I will be interested to watch him go through shoot around today and how much he plays tonight. That will be a factor because he's Auburn's best on-ball defender, and you're going up against 2 really, really good shooting guards in Wade Taylor IV and Zurich Phelps that are both really good shooting guards, good from the outside, good at driving to the basket. I mean, Taylor, first team All-SEC a year ago, 3 straight years with 100-plus assists coming in. So, and this A&M team is deep. Like Auburn, they'll bring guys off the bench for days. So even if you're able to get Wade Taylor or somebody like Solomon Washington or Farrell Payne in foul trouble, they've got Henry Coleman coming off the bench, or Manny Obaseki coming off the bench, or C.J. Wilcher or Hayden Hefner, who's a great three-point shooter for A&M. This game will be very, very tough, in spite of the fact that A&M right now has lost 4 straight games. Tonight is their final home game, and they're trying to get a sellout crowd, which is what Auburn has played in front of, whether it's been at home or on the road all season long.
Andy, we always appreciate the time. Love you joining us each and every week, and you do it thanks to our friends at Craneworks.
And Craneworks is the most trusted name for crane and equipment rental in the Southeast for over 30 years, with a fleet of cranes ranging from 2.5 tons to 500 tons. Craneworks also offers trained and certified operators and riggers to make sure the job is done right. Locations in Birmingham, Nashville, Mobile, and now Huntsville. Visit craneworks.com for more information. We're on the air tonight on Jock starting at 7:30, baby.
There you go. Great stuff, Andy. Appreciate it.
Have a great day, guys. War Eagle.
You too. War Eagle. Andy Burcham, you heard it right here, 7:30 on WJOX 94.5 FM. You can hear Auburn at Texas A&M. We'll talk a little more college basketball. On the other side, there is, like I mentioned, conference tournaments starting today, conference scenarios coming into shape. We'll update you on all of it and get Greg's take on some of the college hoops from over the weekend that we have not referenced with him yet. Next on Mac and Cube in the morning. 8:20, Tuesday, March 4th on Jocks 94.5. Listen online, jocksfm.com. The app is in your app store, iPhone, Android. You can download that for free. Tune in on the go. You can also watch live on YouTube there, or just go to your YouTube page. Don't forget to subscribe. Search Jocks 945. Tune in and watch us live each and every morning. Haven't got a chance to discuss college basketball with you from over the weekend, GMAC. We'll start with Auburn getting that win at Kentucky. Had not won at Rupp since 1988, 20 straight. The Tigers had lost. And not only do they go get that win, but Janai Broome neutralized to an extent. Amari Williams did a great job defending him. But Miles Kelly goes off, 30 points, 10 of 17 from the floor, 9 of 14 from behind three. We mentioned the two banked threes. I mean, it was that kind of a day for the Auburn Tigers. And even though their star didn't get going, a couple of others did, including Chad Baker-Mazara and Tahad Pettiford.
Well, I think that's the key to the team, right? I mean, when you have Tahad Pettiford, Baker-Mazara, and Miles Kelly going for, I think, 45 of their first 50 points, and you have arguably the player of the year, or a guy that's squarely in contention to be the player of the year, really limited. I think he had 1 point in the first half or whatever it was. I mean, that's ridiculous. And that to me is the best indicator of team health. When you don't have your best stuff, or when one guy doesn't have his best stuff, the others are able to somehow pick you up. If you have a poor night shooting, the defense bails you out. If you have a great night shooting, and the defense is lacking, I just like when the team can find a bunch of different avenues. We talk about a lot in football. If I'm trying to drive from Birmingham to Atlanta, the most obvious way is to take I-20, right? I can get there. That's pretty obvious. You know what I-20 is for Auburn? Janai Broome going for 20 plus, getting 13 rebounds, and then Chad Baker-Mazara and others getting theirs. That's the obvious route. But there's also 15 other ways that you can get there. It might not be the most efficient, but there are other ways to get there. And I think that's the beauty right now. If you have few routes, if your only pathway to victory is 2 or 3 different pathways, like Iowa football, their pathway to victory is play great on defense, run the ball, and shrink the game. Very, very few avenues to be able to find a way to win. Well, Auburn proved this weekend in basketball that not only can they do it against a really good Kentucky team, a talented Kentucky team, a big and physical Kentucky team, but they can do it without their best stuff, without their best player being heavily involved on the road. What does that tell you? Pretty dang impressive.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. Most people would not push back on it. Auburn clinches their third SEC title under Bruce Pearl. They had 2 combined in program history before Bruce Pearl. Tigers now 10-2 against AP-ranked teams this season. They're the 3rd team ever with 10 or more wins against AP-ranked opponents before the conference tournament. 3 20-point scorers for the Tigers, none named Janai Broome. That's just the 3rd time in the last 20 seasons Auburn has had 3 20-point scores in a game. And Miles Kelly, the 2nd player in Auburn history with 30 points at Kentucky. I know you knew this, Greg, but old John Malett dropped 42 in 1969. You knew that. I didn't even have to ask around. And
Johnny Malett?
You would have gotten that one for sure.
Oh,
yeah,
come on.
No doubt about it. On the flip side of that, Alabama goes down at Tennessee, 79-76, with a lot of questionable plays and some real headaches late in this game. Mark Sears goes for 24, 7 of 16, 4 of 9 behind the three-point line. Bama shot 41%, 9 of 24 from 3. They out-rebounded Tennessee. They were better in the paint than Tennessee. It's just some real letdowns for this team. And we played it yesterday. Nate Oates took credit for it. He took the blame, which I really appreciated and really respected. But some things that you also look at and just kind of scratch your head, Greg, as to, how are those things happening at this point in the season, and is that going to be an issue in the postseason?
Yeah, really demoralizing, because I'll be honest, as a Bama fan, I felt like for Saturday was a bonus. Not one that I've really expected them to go win. I'm sitting there thinking, hey, we win this game, it's a bonus. We're playing with house money. Nothing can be lost by losing this game. But, man, let's go throw a punch and let's see what happens, right? Like, that's the approach you have as a fan in a game like that. And I, sitting there up 4, with only a couple minutes left, thinking, all right, we got this, man. This is freaking great. This is amazing. only to see it all unwind. But what was most demoralizing was the final 30 seconds. To not get a shot off in the final 30 seconds with an opportunity to possess the ball last and to play for the last shot, and you don't even get a shot up, and you have multiple timeouts that you take home with you. It's just a hard thing to wrap your head around. So I'm really glad that Nate Oates stepped up and took that heat. But also, I mean, the players too. I mean, everyone shares blame in that situation. It's a hard thing to think about because, gosh, they had done such a great job to get to that point and to have it all unravel so quickly, so suddenly, without really giving yourself much of a chance at all, was extremely demoralizing. So, hey, learn from it, bounce back. But, man, bummer to let that one slip away. Yeah, and to have it happen in buzzer-beater fashion the way that it did with more breakdowns defensively for that shot to even really get up was it had to be disappointing for a lot of folks to watch. And, for Meshack not to hit a three the whole game and then knock that one down to be able to allow Tennessee to take it home and get to 24-5 on the season. Just a little bit wild to see how that one went. So a couple of other games from last night. Duke continues to be dominant, and it is interesting to me how a lot of people just completely dismiss what Duke is doing this year based on the fact that the ACC is not what it has been. I would not classify the ACC as completely terrible top to bottom. I know Clemson is not a traditional power, but they're having a heck of a year. Wake Forest is a 20-win basketball team, and it's not what it was in the mid to late 90s. It's not what it was maybe 5 years ago. But I also think that the ACC is not, the worst conference in America. Duke has 10 conference wins by 25 or more points this year. I'm going to say that one more time. 10 games in conference play, Duke has won by 25 or more points. That's the most in ACC history. It's the most ever in the history of that league. Now, because it has usually been a little bit more competitive, I think you would probably understand that that's a big reason why that takes place. However, this is a Duke team that's been dominant in a lot of different ways. They had 5 in double figures last night. Cooper Flagg, 10 of 16, 28 points. He continues to make his push for player of the year. 93-60 over Wake. They get to 27-3, 14 of 39 from behind the three-point line. Wake shot just 32% from the floor. And Duke gets a share of the ACC regular season title. 4th straight win by 30 or more points. 4th straight by 30 or more. So just pretty impressive, GMAC, what Cooper Flagg is doing as a freshman and what this Duke team is doing collectively. Yeah, crazy impressive. And I think when you look at just the ease, and the funny thing about this Duke team is it's not like they're, a bunch of seasoned vets. Their best basketball could very well be in front of them the more they continue to keep playing together. You talk to people that are really in the know. I think a lot of people think that Duke has the highest ceiling. At least the people that I've talked to, they think they have the highest ceiling. Doesn't mean they're going to go and win it, but they're the team I think most teams would least like to face. Now, Auburn's probably the most complete and clearly the most veteran-laden, but the team with the high, if you catch Duke on the wrong day, you're not beating them. It's going to be kind of up to them to screw it up in some cases, depending on who they're playing against. So I think that team's really, really good, and obviously Cooper Flagg and company is amazing. He's also got a couple other guys on that roster that are ridiculous as well, but that's a fun group to watch if you're just a fan of basketball, man. They make it look easy. You could say the ACC is down, and that's the main reason Duke has done what they have this year. But Duke has also handed 14 different programs their worst loss of the season, 7 of those from the ACC. One of those that's not from the ACC is Illinois, Greg, and they handed them their worst loss in program history this year. So it's not just feasting on a weak conference. This Duke team is for real. They are a legitimate national championship contender, and I find it interesting that people look at Duke and say, oh, well, they're not what they should be because they're feasting on a weak conference. Yet those same people will take an Oklahoma basketball team and say they should be in because they're terrible against a great conference. Like, you kind of can't have both of those in my mind. But well, you can. You lose a little credibility. Yeah, you can have both. It's just not one I'd recommend. So you get that one last night. Also, a team that I think is going to be a real national championship contender. I don't know exactly what that number will be going into the tournament.
But Houston, under Kelvin Sampson, continues to be impressive as they take down Kansas last night, 65-59. They get to 26-4. LJ Cryer, 22 points last night for Houston. So conference tournaments, conference championships sort of coming into shape here in this college basketball season. We mentioned that a couple conference tournaments get underway tonight. Here are your regular season conference champions: Auburn, Houston, St. John's. So the Big East, the Big 12, the SEC have been wrapped up as far as the regular season. Duke has a share of it in the ACC at least, could potentially still get it outright. And now you look at the road ahead for some of those teams. We'll do that when we come back of kind of what lies ahead from a seeding perspective, a conference tournament seeding, NCAA seeding perspective. Take a look at all of that. As these teams get back on the floor tonight. Auburn at Texas A&M, 8 o'clock on ESPN is going to be a good one. But if you're looking to get around your floor and it needs some work, GMAC, Shinar Flooring is who you need to call.
Yeah, Fu has done an amazing job of building a company on trust and integrity. These are good guys. You can trust them in your home. They're going to protect your home, and they're going to install the best quality flooring that you can find. They actually have in stock right now 40,000 square feet of CoreTech flooring by Shaw. That's the amazing waterproof, kid-proof, pet-proof flooring that brings a ton of value to your home or business. They're so easy to clean. They're so easy to maintain. That CoreTech, it's waterproof, and it's perfect for kitchens, laundry rooms, bathrooms. And you can use it anywhere. It's just really good in those areas. Get 12-month financing with approved credit. So if you're thinking about making some changes to your floors, call who? Call Fu. Call them at 205-518-6423, or you can go online at fuandyou.com.
All right, when we come back, a little bit more on how some of the seeding could begin to shape up tonight and for the rest of this week in college basketball. That's next on Mac and Cube in the morning. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning mentioned we've got Auburn at Texas A&M. Coverage on Jocks begins tonight at 7:30 p.m. Andy Birchman Company on the call for that one. Tomorrow on the show, Rick Barnes, Tennessee head basketball coach, joins us. You'll be able to hear him after the Vols' big win against Alabama. So here's what we have left from a seeding perspective of where things are probably going to go and maybe where some things could change. Obviously, we all go to Joe Lunardi, look at the bracketology, see where that is, what it looks like. And Lunardi currently has Duke, Tennessee, Auburn on the one line, along with Houston. Duke's got Georgia Tech Saturday. Tennessee has Ole Miss and then South Carolina. Auburn, we know, at A&M tonight, and then Alabama at home. Houston is at Baylor. That's what they have left. On the two line, Michigan State, Iowa State, Florida, and Alabama. Michigan State is at Iowa and then has Michigan at home. Iowa State has BYU and then they're at Kansas State. Florida is at Alabama and then they have Ole Miss. So then Alabama, of course, has Florida on Wednesday and then they're at Auburn. The teams that are looking to move up after that, St. John's, Wisconsin, Texas Tech, and Kentucky would be on the three line. St. John's is going to be at Marquette. Wisconsin is going to be at Minnesota and then Penn State at home. Texas Tech has Colorado and then they're at Arizona State. Kentucky, LSU, and then at Missouri. So those are your teams that are sort of jockeying for different spots. G-Mac, of course, the conference tournament could have a little bit to do with this as well. But
for sure.
Whose path do you kind of maybe like to move up, and who makes you nervous thinking they could potentially move down?
Ooh. I don't know. Which way would you lean as far as moving down? Because that's where I struggle. All I ever see in this point of the season is opportunity. I kind of struggle with the idea of moving down at this point. I always have.
If you go by what's left, I think the ones are in good shape.
Right.
Tennessee could be the only one that you would say potentially could go down. My question to Joe Lunardi right now would be, if the ones were to win, what two with wins could potentially leapfrog one of them? Once again, conference tournaments could have a lot to do with this.
Right.
So you would look at Alabama with games against Florida at Auburn. I would imagine if Alabama wins those two games, it probably doesn't matter what Tennessee does. Even with the win against Alabama, be it at home, Alabama probably going to jump to the one line. You get those wins. You beat number one at their place, and you beat a ranked Florida team at home. I think you're probably looking to move up to the one line. And if Houston wins at Baylor, that could be one that Alabama has got the win against Houston. Maybe they leapfrog them. I think Auburn and Duke are set on the one line. I don't care what happens the rest of the way.
Probably not.
Houston is there, but with just a game against Baylor and what Alabama has, potentially you look at them being able to move up. I don't know if Florida at Alabama and Ole Miss will be enough to move up. Possibly, but that might require one of those teams going down as well. Michigan State at Iowa and Michigan, I don't think that's enough to say, well, we won those two games. It didn't matter what Houston did. We're moving up ahead of them. Iowa State, now BYU and at Kansas State, it's not terrible, but I don't think that's enough to just jump those other teams if those teams were to go ahead and win. So I think that there's not enough on the schedule for a lot of the twos to just leapfrog the ones if they handle their business. I think that's kind of the problem. Some of the ones have the more difficult road when you look at obviously what Auburn has and what Tennessee has. Duke having just Georgia Tech and Houston having just Baylor, that might be enough for them to go backwards because they're not going to have time to lose. So I think if there's a team that's going to move up, it's going to be Alabama. And if they get both of those, I don't really care what the 4-1 seeds do. I think there's a good chance Alabama leapfrogs one of them.
Well, I think Alabama's in good shape to get to the one line. I mean, there's plenty of meat on the bone as far as the strength of schedule. Their RPI is only going to get better from this point forward. I mean, you think about what's left on the schedule. You got some really challenging games against really good teams, and regardless of the outcome, your numbers are probably going to strengthen. Your Ken Palm ratings could strengthen as well. So there's a lot of stuff from a rating standpoint where you're going to get better. Then you go in the SEC tournament, and as long as you don't lose to some surprising team, you're in really great shape. So, and by the way, a surprising loss would not be out of the realm of possibility. I mean, there's a couple teams that are playing for their lives. You look at some of the teams that are on the bubble right now. Georgia on the bubble, first team out as of this moment, and Oklahoma trying to solidify their spot, as is Texas. So there's 3 teams that are kind of on the cutting line here that you wouldn't necessarily want to see in an early round game in the SEC tournament because their life is on the line. You also have Arkansas, who's far from a lock at this point to make the field. Feel good about them, but far from a lock.
They have some work to do. They have work to do. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think another team, when you go to the fours and you look at Arizona, A&M, Michigan, and Purdue, teams that maybe could really help themselves and could possibly make a move. Michigan has number 13 Maryland, and then they're at number 8 Michigan State. Those could be 2 wins that could propel them over some teams that are in front of them. I'm not saying that they go to the 1 line, but if you're just talking maybe you move up from a 4 seed to potentially a 3 or 2 seed, I mean, that would be enough in front of you to be able to potentially make that happen. Purdue's on the 4 line. They have Rutgers, and then they're at Illinois. I don't know if that's enough to really move the meter a whole lot and potentially get you moved up. Now, Texas A&M has the number 1 team in the nation at home tonight. Going to LSU is not going to get you a ton of credibility, but you get that win against number 1, potentially go handle your business against LSU. Could you move up to the 3 line? Possibly. I think that's one that you look at as having an opportunity to go make a move. That could be a real one. So maybe some of the 4 seeds also have a lot of room to move up and potentially kind of gain some ground. Arizona, by the way, has Arizona State and then at Kansas. That normally at Kansas would be one that gives you a ton of movement. I don't know if this year in Coach Self's team is going to be the one that's going to be able to do that for you. So I think if you're looking for big movers, you potentially have a Michigan State on the 2 line. You have Alabama on the 2 line. And then I think you would go to Michigan on the 4 line of teams who potentially have real opportunities to make a big move with what's left in the regular season. And then you have those teams that you referenced are fighting for something totally different, and that's just to be able to get into the tournament.
Well, it will be interesting, too. I mean, you look at these teams, the second the SEC tournament starts, every team in the SEC is going to get a bump as far as some of their ratings are concerned. So those that are like Georgia, for example, like they got to have a couple of good wins down the stretch. They can't just go, 0-for down the stretch and expect to get in. Not going to happen. But the second that they get into the tournament and things tip off and at Nashville, guess what? Everything's in good shape. Everything looks real good at that point because all those teams with the teams they're going to be facing are only going to improve their net ratings. And if they get more quad 1 opportunities, they're going to be in really, really good shape. So I think the SEC right now is in tremendous spot, but the teams at the top are probably have the most at risk. Not necessarily Auburn. I think Auburn's pretty solidified at this point, given some of the wins they have on the road, especially down the stretch. But you look at some of these other teams, I mean, what does Florida have to gain? They're not trying to say they're going to just mail it in, but they're not playing for, they're going to, okay, so they're a 2 seed or a 3 seed. Fine. You know what I mean? What does...
I think the main thing there is just who you're probably going to end up seeing.
Sure.
And you'd rather.
The likelihood is, it's going to be a tough track either way. Like A&M's are going to be a 3 seed, or if they make a great run, they're a 2 seed. You know what I mean? Like that's a good spot, but it's not the end of the world. It's not like it's not like, hey, NCAA tournament or NIT here. So I'd rather be a team like Georgia or a team like Arkansas or a team like Texas in the SEC tournament than a team that is, a 4 or a 5 seed in the tournament.
You go back to some of those teams like you mentioned that are kind of fighting for their lives. Texas at Mississippi State tonight, looking to find a way into the tournament. Of course, Arkansas at Vanderbilt tonight. That's 9:00 on the SEC network. 7:00 on the SEC network will be Texas at Mississippi State. Those are 2 teams they're trying to assure themselves a spot just in the tournament, trying to find their way in. The SEC is going to break the record of teams that get in. Lenardi currently has 13. Either way, it's going to be the most. It's just going to be a matter of how much they break the record by. But that's kind of the way that you're looking at what lies ahead for some of these teams, as you have a couple regular season champions that have been crowned. You have a couple of conference tournaments that get started tonight. and a path to maybe stay on the 1 line, move to the 1 line, or move up from the 3 or 4 line to the 2-3 line, all taking place starting tonight in college basketball. It's going to be a fun week of college hoops. This is one of the best times of the year in sports as it gets completely bonkers with conference tournaments beginning today. And a lot of times you can just, sometimes this thing gets going at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, goes late at night. You can just have basketball on in the background nonstop for like the next month. And it's incredible. It's always fun to see, always fun to be around. Kind of like Bromberg's when you walk in there, GMAC, always incredible inventory at Bromberg's.
Great inventory and great service. I just love so much the time I've been able to spend with the wonderful people at Bromberg's. I always have a great experience. I've never walked out of there feeling like I didn't do what I wanted to do or get what I wanted to get. I always feel like they push me in the right direction. I always feel like they give me a good sense of why this is the piece that I need to be buying for my wife or my loved one or for my godchildren, whatever it may be. We get everything from there. We get timeless jewelry, of course, but we also go and get giftware. If there's a wedding coming up, and there's several coming up here for us in the next several weeks, we go and we get the gift from Bromberg's. It's just, you're getting quality when you walk in the door. The second you walk in the door at either the Mountain Brook Village store or at the Summit, it's Bromberg's.
All right, we'll get to a break, come back, go to a little bit more college football. It's a lot of time on college basketball that we just spent there, but a couple of things happening around college football that I want to talk to GMAC about. We'll do that next on Mac and Cube in the morning. 8:50 Tuesday, March the 4th on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Going to talk a little bit of college football. As we mentioned, spring practice began for Sanford, Alabama. Some other teams yesterday. We heard from Kalen DeBoer. We'll come back to Coach DeBoer in the 9 o'clock hour, discuss Alabama's first day of spring just a little bit more, but wanted to kind of reference something that came up yesterday around college football. And Andy Staples had a report, GMAC, on the ACC and where things could be heading. Apparently, schools could pay $200 million to leave the ACC once a settlement goes through today. That figure falls to well below $100 million should a school wish to exit the league after the 29-30 school year. So you could save another $100 million if you were to wait 5 extra years. This obviously continues to go down the path of potential new money distribution in the ACC, yet it sounds like some schools are at least still investigating what it's going to look like. Florida State Clemson going to vote today on an agreement that would ultimately result in a settlement of 4 ongoing lawsuits. David Hale reporting this, with the ACC president set to vote on terms with new TV money distribution as well. So it's not what we love talking about. It's not the cool things that we talk about as it refers to college football, but some potentially big news around the ACC, Greg, as to what its future could look like.
And I think that this is, most of the time with the ACC, I've said that this is a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, right? You're not fixing it. People are disgruntled. They're going to continue to be disgruntled. The gap will continue to widen, but this does feel like real legitimacy with just kind of squashing some of the negativity and the perceived negativity. But here's the reality of the situation. Florida State doesn't have any money. So we can sit here and say, oh, well, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. Florida State doesn't have the finances to be able to come close to raising $200 million. If they do, they're going to have to sell their program. I mean, it's simple as that. They're going to have to bring in private equity. That's the only way they're going to be able to generate $200 million right now to get out. So they don't have any, and I don't know what Clemson's financial situation is. I know Florida State's in trouble as far as finances are concerned. Doesn't mean they can't generate money. They can. It's just to be able to get out of their grant of rights, they don't have the money to do that. I mean, guess what? Who does? Nobody has just $200 million lying around, except for maybe SMU. So it's a tough spot to be in. But I do think I don't think this is going to be a long-term successful way of handling this. I think in time, they're going to have to rethink how this goes down, because over the course, it sounds good right now, but in 5 years, how is Virginia going to feel about getting unequal revenue distribution?
It's going to backfire.
It is. It's going to 100% crash and burn.
History repeats itself, right? Should we go to the Big 12 and look at how this worked out?
Correct. And I'm not saying it isn't deserved right now, just to cool things off, because it's been so hot and just closely contested and hotly debated. It's great now. It solves a problem today, but it creates 5 more problems 5 years from now. And guess what? Long term, Virginia is far more attractive to other conferences than Florida State. No disrespect, but it's the truth. It's just
explain
realities.
That to people, because there's not a lot of folks that either believe that or understand that. Why is that?
Because it's a new part. It's a new state that can be added. It's contiguous by the fact that Virginia borders North Carolina. And in this scenario, North Carolina and Virginia would be the 2 that everybody's going after, whether it's the Big Ten or the SEC. And guess what? North Carolina borders South Carolina. South Carolina is an SEC state. So those 2 programs have the most leverage in this situation. Not Clemson, not Florida State, not Miami, Virginia and North Carolina. And I know people don't think about that, but they are also high-level academic institutions, which is extremely attractive to the Big Ten. And the SEC, they view that as contiguous, and they continue to want to make sure all the states, they don't want to add traveling challenges for their member institutions. Those 2 both border each other. So I think we're in a scenario where those two have carte blanche, and 5 years from now, can they get to $100 million to buy themselves out? You better believe it. Those two schools can definitely get there.
Yeah, 100 feels a lot different than 200, and that's kind of a moronic thing to say. But it's just when you're talking about schools that don't have a lot at their disposal right now, being able to go find that, especially if you had that head start of that was your plan. The problem with all of this, Greg, is you're making these plans, these adjustments, you're trying to gather this money. What's it going to look like in 2030?
Oh, gosh.
I'm saying Florida State's sitting here saying, we want out, we want to go do this, or we can get out in 2030 and go to – they could be totally different. We could have a G5 playoff. We could have – there could be another conference that evaporates and goes away. We don't know. And I appreciate kind of where you went with, Clemson wants this now, and they feel like they're so much more valuable now. Well, as you stated before, every conference needs bottom feeders, right? Would you have gotten to where you were without said bottom feeders in your league? But now you want to kind of stiff arm those and say, we deserve more than you because we beat you up for a little while. It just, the grass is not always greener. Be careful what you wish for. And some of these schools might be finding out soon that might just be the case. More college football next hour. Hour number 3 underway. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Appreciate you tuning in. 800-239-9569. 800-239-WJOX. Alabama back on the practice field yesterday, first day of spring football. We discussed a couple of the position battles, a couple of the injuries, guys that are not going to be taking place in spring, how that might affect the Crimson Tide a little bit earlier in the show. We'll do that a little bit more now. And if you have questions, comments, thoughts on Alabama's spring, what you want to learn, what you want to try to see, what you want to try to hear about, we'll take those now. 800-239-9569. Text in 205-834-9450. You can also tweet in at Mac and Cube. First, Kalen DeBoer on that quarterback battle and just how he sees that going for the Crimson Tide this spring.
It's it's something. I mean, just they're all at different points, but few things procedure wise that are a little different, and good to see those guys all operating through that. And they all had their times, of course, where they looked really good, and times where they got to continue to grow and get better.
How do you foresee this going, Greg? What do you want to hear about it? What do you want to try to learn about it? Not necessarily a prediction of who wins it, but just what would put your mind at ease with this Alabama quarterback battle coming out of spring?
My mind at ease would be Ty Simpson goes and just has a great spring, and they name him the starter in May.
Okay.
That would put my mind at ease. But it doesn't have to be that. That would be a big relief to know that you have your leader established. He can continue to develop confidence throughout the summer, develop a rapport with the receivers, and they can be in a really good spot going into fall camp. And the backup job can be a battle. Now, that would give me confidence. What would also give me confidence is if Ty Simpson looks great, and I don't care, Keelan Russell or Austin Mack, they look also great, and you have a situation like Graham Mertz, DJ Lagway last year, where a guy forces his way onto the field because of how well he performs in practice and throughout the offseason. That would also give me great confidence. I think there's a lot of good avenues here. The only thing that would be very, very discouraging would be if a guy hasn't necessarily emerged, they don't feel super confident, and all of a sudden they're in the portal in May, thinking they need to have a stopgap to be able to get it to the next year. That's what would concern me. I don't think it's likely. I'm just saying that's what would scare me to death.
And that the Keelan Russell hype already kind of beginning with just a couple of videos. But unfortunately, that's where we are. When you have media with limited access to practice and they put a couple of things out, and all of a sudden, here we go. So would you like to lay out a disclaimer on that for the folks that are already really excited?
What are people saying about it?
Just, you don't need to say anything, Greg. Look at the throw.
How was it being defended?
Doesn't matter, Greg. Do you see how far it went? Look how far.
How far did it go?
Look how high.
How far.
Look how high.
I don't think I'm just going to tell you this flat out. I've seen a lot of guys throw absolute lasers. You know the best arm at Alabama, maybe in the Saban era, you know who had the best arm? His name was Phillip Sims. You know how many games he started? 0. I just don't. I hope he's great. Just don't lose your mind over a couple of routes on air practice reps. That's not indicator of future results. The best arm in the Saban era was Phil Sims.
What about routes on helmets?
I'm not sure. So what?
The guys are in helmets covering each other.
That's fine. Better than at least they're covering them a little bit. I'm good with that.
Okay. I just thought it was fair to bring up that there was already the excitement.
I have not seen the excitement. So where is this excitement at?
It's where you do not live, and that would be social media.
Okay. Okay. Well, that would explain it. Yeah, I mean, it's fine to be excited. I'd rather have you be excited than not be excited. But understand that you can be sold a bill of goods about what a guy might be based off how he looks in shorts and shoulders.
Yeah.
Like let's just allow this thing let's just proceed with caution, and we'll see what happens. We'll see how it plays out.
Why would you? But why would you wait to see how it plays out when you've seen him throw a pass in practice?
Because
very high and very far, and a spiral.
Well, I would hope it was a spiral. I mean,
look at it.
Yeah, if we don't have spirals at college level, we got real problems. That is an issue.
Saying, look how tight the spiral was.
How do we know? Did it zoom in on the ball?
I mean, if you have trained football eyes, you saw it.
So I can tell you this.
I think people are getting disappointed with your lack of excitement for a throw.
Maybe I am. I'm not trying to be the dark cloud. I'm excited about him. I hope he's great. I just don't know if at this point him warming up is an indicator of, the second coming. I don't know if he's going to be Vince Young based on the warm up. I don't know that. We'll see. That'd be amazing. That'd be great.
I think it's a fair weight to make that comp.
Nothing would make me happier if that came to fruition. But I'm not going to put my reputation on the line and suggest that this guy's,
From a realistic standpoint, though, shouldn't there also be a desire that a true freshman quarterback is not needed to come in and start for your program?
I see, like that's where I think a lot of people. I am very much disconnected when it comes to the group that wants the next guy. Like the last thing I ever want to see on the field is a true freshman starting at quarterback.
The next guy's always better, though, Greg.
But it's the last thing I would ever want. And not because he can't play, it's because freshmen still are going to make freshman mistakes. Doesn't matter how talented, for example, how talented was Bryce Young? Pretty good, right?
Very talented.
Went on to win a Heisman Trophy, like pretty dang good football player. We didn't need to see him on the football field as a freshman. It wasn't good. How good was Tua Tagovailoa?
Very.
How long did it take for him to play meaningful minutes in a college football game? 14 and a half games, right?
Yep.
Like the Jalen Hurts example of 2016 is a rare one. And it was also kind of a unique situation because that team was so outrageously stacked. Look at the 2016 roster. It's ridiculous. And Jalen was a dynamic athlete. So if you are a drop back guy, we really don't want you on the field as a freshman. Really, really don't want you on the field as a freshman. Now, if you're a runaround guy, all right, we can live with that. We can make it work. If you're a runaround guy, that's just natural athletic ability. Like we don't need that. Doesn't require development. You either got that or you don't. Go back, and I think people will remember this differently than reality. People think DJ Lagway lit the world on fire last year. He did not. He was very average. He made 2 or 3 plays a game that were spectacular. And he also had 2 or 3 plays a game where it's like, but people don't remember that. They just know he was a true freshman. They know he had 5 stars, and they know he went on to have a great year.
Look how sidearm, though.
It's just, I think that I'm all for wanting what's next. I'm all for being excited about what's coming. I totally support that line of thinking. That's what makes the world go round. Unreasonable comparisons to to past greats. Oh, this guy's the best prospect since Jamarcus Russell. Maybe he is. I don't know. But I do know that a freshman on the field for a team that has real expectations is not something you want, ever.
It's something that we're going to have to watch and see how it plays out. But it's okay to be excited about a guy's talent and what potentially could be done. But getting a little bit ahead of maybe where things should be, might be, and exactly what you want to happen, sometimes I think gets a little bit confusing with very small tidbits of information. And it's kind of where we are with sort of how it's covered. And like you said, the desire for certain people just can't get past the what's next. And it's something that has been disappointing at times because I do think at certain places, specifically Alabama, it has caused people to lack an appreciation for what was or what had been, and giving people certain respect that I think they had deserved at times. It's just that continuous Okay, but this guy's going to be better. But wait till you see this guy. And it's like, well, that guy was really good. And maybe appreciate him for a little bit for what he did for a while and see, go back and appreciate what was accomplished when that guy was there. And it's just that turning of the page a little bit too quickly, Greg, I think oftentimes removes that.
Yeah, I think it can. I think sometimes everybody wants what's next. Everybody sees the 5 stars. 5 stars can't miss. I mean, you have guys that are 5 stars that people still think are elite. I'm sure somebody somewhere thinks that Malachi Nelson is going to win the Heisman Trophy this year. He was a 5-star coming out of high school. He must be legit. Well, he got beat out at SC, then he got beat out at Boise State, and now he's at New Mexico or wherever the heck he went, right? New Mexico State, wherever he ended up. Not discrediting that. He might end up becoming a great player. But the 5 stars doesn't always mean that you're bound for success. There are plenty of 5 stars that aren't good, and there's a whole heap of 4 stars that are terrible. It happens.
Oh, boy.
I hate to break it to you. It's the truth. So it will be interesting, though, to see what the staff's plan will be, because the kid clearly's got a lot of God-given ability and has not been – he's been a late riser in the recruiting rankings, meaning that he's kind of done it off merit. And I think there's something to be said about that. Sometimes these sophomore top hundreds, a guy is a sophomore, he's all world, and he never gets better. But he's still a 5-star because he's a 5-star as a sophomore. I've seen that a bunch. Some of these guys that are late risers, like Keelan Russell, was going to SMU and was a highly, a good player, but he had a much better senior year than he had junior year, and has shown great growth and great progress as a prospect. And we'll see this year if that growth can continue. And I think getting him valuable reps in the spring, in the summer, and in fall camp will be great for his development. But I think as a freshman, it's always best to work on you. Don't try to, when you're a starter, you're working on the other team. You're working on the opponent's defense. I think as a freshman, as an 18-year-old, it's really valuable to work on you. Learn how to be a college player and not try to drink water through a fire hose. I think it's a hard spot to be in.
No, I think it's fair. A couple tweets coming into the show, and then we'll get to a break, switch over to the NFL on the other side. Need to talk a little bit of combine, some news happening around the NFL. Want to discuss a little bit of that with you. A question that we referenced a little bit earlier in the show, Greg. PB tweets in, at Mac and Cube, who will Alabama's wide receiver 3 be in 2025? Greg and I went back and forth on just if you were given access to Alabama's practice this spring, all the film, or be able to go and watch, what was it that you would want to see most? And that was kind of where I went, is that I feel pretty good about 1 and 2, but I want to see who's going to be next and want to see who's the guy that can maybe benefit most from 1 and 2 having good years again, because we don't really feel like we have a great idea who that's going to be. And obviously Greg brought up Isaiah Horton transferring in from Miami. A few others are going to vie for that spot, but I think it's a real question, G-Mac, going into the spring, and one that we may get answers to coming out, and we may not.
May not. I mean, I think the likelihood of finding out who your guy's going to be coming out of spring nowadays is less and less. But it's not impossible. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm optimistic that they like the guys they have. I think they're excited about the guys they have, and now it's about going and seeing what they can do.
Absolutely. Also, Jolly tweets in, this kind of aimed at where you were going, I think, discussing Alabama spring. Am I wrong for being concerned about Ty Simpson being the guy? Why hasn't he turned the corner yet and taken over the helm? Was it worry about Jalen pouting and affecting the team, or was it Ty not being close? I'll say this. There were moments that Greg realistically on this show last fall thought Ty Simpson had a real chance to win the job. Greg said multiple times here that it was closer than people thought, that Ty Simpson was having a better camp than people were discussing, and that it wasn't a given that Jalen McElroy was just going to take that thing. So this show at least has discussed him as having an opportunity to be the starter at other moments. But do you think there's also some reality to where Jolly's going with that on Ty Simpson not necessarily being able to move other people out of the way?
No, I think sometimes it takes guys a couple years, man. Like sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Not everybody's ready to start as a redshirt freshman. Like, okay, yeah, you can maybe start, but how good are you going to be? I mean, look at Arch Manning. Arch Manning's God's gift to football, right? Like, we all acknowledge that. Like, he's a redshirt sophomore. He's a year younger than Ty. I mean, it's not like he's been around. He's played some ball, but sometimes it takes people a couple years to kind of get to where they're comfortable operating the whole thing. Like it took me a couple years, right? I mean, it took a while to develop and learn how to be a pro and learn how to approach it and to get bigger and to get stronger, to get twitchier, whatever you need to work on as a player. Now, it doesn't happen immediately for everybody. It doesn't mean you're a bad Mac Jones didn't start until he was, a redshirt junior. Or I mean, he started because of injury a couple times. Did he stink? Like, no, it just, some guys it takes a little longer than others. And I think some people just assume if you're not starting as a freshman or a redshirt freshman, like, are you even good? Well, Joe Burrow didn't start until he was a redshirt junior. Ended up being a real good player. And guess what? As a redshirt junior, he wasn't even good. As a redshirt senior, he won the Heisman. So it's definitely everyone's light goes on at a different time. And I don't have concerns about Ty. I think Ty's biggest problem was a lack of confidence early in his career, a fear of failure early in he's a pleaser. He's a coach's kid. He wants to do right. But guess what? It's hard up here, man. Like, you're going to make some mistakes. You got to bounce back from those mistakes and don't let those mistakes define your performance that day. I think that was his biggest challenge. And that is not about talent. That's about maturity. So I think he now has gotten more mature. He's a man. He's grown up. He now knows that an interception is not going to define his day, and he's going to keep chopping. And let's be real, too. I do think that this coaching staff's approach to the quarterback position has been extremely beneficial for Ty Simpson. And part of it, because I played for Nick Saban. What's being told to you is don't screw it up, don't screw it up, don't screw it up. It's hard to play. And I love Coach Saban to death. But it's hard to play when you get ripped every single time you make a mistake. I think this coaching staff is a little bit better, a little bit more glass half full, a little bit more positive. And I think that's had a really good impact on Ty. And they feel great about how he's grown since they've gotten on campus.
It'll be definitely a battle to watch this spring as Alabama moves on from Jalen Milroe. If you're looking to move on to a new home, Greg, who should you call?
That would be Crocker Moving Service. They're a local company owned by an Iraq War veteran, Eric Crocker. Crocker believes in hiring movers you can trust to complete full background checks and run drug tests on every single employee. These are good guys. And you can trust them in your home. Whether you need your whole home packed up and move, your company headquarters moved across country, or you just want them to come rearrange your living room, these guys got you covered. They also do deliveries for furniture that you purchased and need to get to your home. So call or visit them online today for a free quote. The website is crockermovingservices.com. That's crockermovingservices.com. Support your veterans by choosing Crocker Moving Services for your next move.
All right, when we come back, some news around the NFL, combine winners, losers, who maybe we walked away from watching some of the combine and feel better about than we did going in. All that next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 9:21 Tuesday, March 4th on Jocks 94.5. Some NFL news floating around that we need to get to. We'll cover the majority of that in this segment. 800-239-9569. You want to get in. Combine winners, losers for you. Who did you maybe come away from it with a different opinion on? Before we get to the Combine, Greg, announced today Jimmy Johnson going to retire from Fox. And somebody who, I don't know what people initially thought when he was going to make the move from coaching into television, but has been a staple at that Fox desk for, 2 decades? And just been so good, so much fun to watch. Always feels like he adds to the broadcast, a guy that I know will be missed. I've just always been a fan of his on TV.
No, he's terrific. Always really enjoy his perspective. I was amazed that he'd been doing it as long as he had. I guess it just didn't feel like he'd been there as long as he had, but he's earned it in the Hall of Fame, and hopefully gets to enjoy his retirement.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubts. It's been a lot of fun to watch what Coach Johnson has done. We also did not reference yesterday the San Francisco 49ers trading Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders. You start to think about the core that Washington's putting together. Now, they still have a lot of work to do, specifically on defense, and trying to keep some guys around. But offensively, what they're putting together has to have you excited if you're a Commanders fan of what the future may be, adding Deebo Samuels to Jaden Daniels and company.
Totally. And I think when you look at Deebo Samuel, is he what he was 4 years ago? I don't know. How much tread is left on the tires there? That's my big question. But Washington's clearly all in. They feel like they're a couple pieces away from getting it done, and I'd be curious to see how they continue to kind of build on a roster that feels kind of ready to make a move.
Yeah, it's made more of a move than people thought they would this past year. So now you add to that, and people probably look at it and think this is a team that could be in contention in the division, except for the fact that Philadelphia is in your division, which is going to make things a little bit difficult. But yeah, you got a young core, you have explosive capabilities, and looks like a team obviously that has a chance to make some ground and potentially be in the playoffs again coming up next year. NFL,
I got to be so hard on them. I mean, they're
not being hard on anybody. Just saying
that Philly's there. I mean, come on. Like, you don't think they can beat Philly? Come on. You don't know?
Well,
maybe.
Didn't in the playoffs. Did in the regular season, but blown out in the playoffs. I don't think that the Giants or the Cowboys are going to be too much to overcome, which also, if you read Jordan Renan, he says that there is now real consideration by the New York Giants to move up to number 1 and take that pick away from the Tennessee Titans, which if I was a Titans fan, I wouldn't hate it. Because I think you need as many draft picks as you can get right now towards the top. But also, you've tried and swung and missed on quarterback a couple of times. Do you want to try that again? I don't know. But Cam Ward seems to be the guy right now for the Giants that they have their sights on. And don't know if the Titans are going to play ball necessarily, but would that be the move for the Giants in your mind to make to go up and get Cam Ward at number 1?
I think Cam Ward's really, really good, but if they're having to sell the farm to do it, I don't know if I feel great about that. Like, I think he's kind of a high risk player. Do you not agree?
A tad.
Haven't we been down this path before? Now, is he the best available? Yeah, probably. But I don't know, bud. It just feels like, how many teams are really going to be just clamoring to move up and go get their quarterback in this draft? Like, how many teams?
I think there are a lot of teams that would like to move up and get a quarterback, but is that quarterback in this draft where they're going to pull a Ditka and give it all up for to go move and get Ricky Williams? I don't think that guy's here. But we also know that a lot of people are just quarterback desperate, and a lot of teams are quarterback desperate. So they might not look at it from the perspective of, okay, we're going to move up to take that guy because he wows us that much. It's just that we need that position to the extent of we're going to do whatever it takes to move up and get one of the 2, 3, or one of the one that we see that's going to come in and change our franchise.
And I'm totally fine with that. I have no problem whatsoever if you want to go and do whatever you feel like it needs to be done to go get a quarterback. But you can't miss. You have to nail it. And if you don't nail it, you're dead. I mean, as much as I would love to sit here and tell you, oh, well, you can overcome selling everything to go and get your guy, the reality is you can't. It's not real. You cannot do it. It has to be a you got to be really, really good, and you got to make sure you got the right guy. And I am not 100% convinced that the right guy's in this draft class. It doesn't mean the guys won't end up being amazing, but there is major question marks about the guys that are going to be getting picked early in this draft.
There are, but that also goes to, do you want to, where do you want to mitigate your risk? Is it with the guys who you have graded towards the top with some risk, or do you want to start taking those risks with guys that you are lesser talented and have done less on the field in college? I can
Depends
understand
on what the cost is. I'm
fair.
fine. Like, I got no problem drafting Cam Ward at 17. You know what I mean? I got no issue drafting Tyler Shuck at 41. I got no problem with that because guess what? I didn't have to sell anything to get there. If you are the Giants and your draft, your pick is wherever it is. What is it? 4, 3? Wherever they're picking, fine. If I don't have to give up anything, great. That's better. But if I got to give up this year's first-round pick, next year's first-round pick in 2 seconds, like, I'm not doing that. Not for this guy. Not for when it's a real question mark. I'll stay put, and if he drops to me, he drops to me. If not, I'll take the next best available because guess what? It's only one pick. If I start trying to leverage up and try to move way up in the draft and alternate a few spots, then now I'm dedicating 2 years of draft capital to a guy that has question marks.
Yep.
And I love Cam Ward, by the way. Like, I really like him, but it would scare me to put all of my eggs in that basket. You know what I mean?
Well, there have been very few guys coming out specifically at that position that it wouldn't scare you to do that. I mean, we all know that having an elite quarterback with a lack of ability around him has rarely worked, if at all ever worked in the NFL. So you need multiple selections to be able to build. And apparently now the Jets are in that market also to move up to number one. Let's go to some of the movers, though, from the combine over the weekend. The running back position is one that potentially saw a little bit of movement over the weekend, Greg. We know where Ashton Genty is. He didn't work out. There's nothing to worry about. He'll be the first running back off the board. But we've talked a lot about McElroy Hampton, and he's somebody that absolutely helped himself in Indianapolis, showing real explosive capabilities. And we know what he's got. We've seen the tape, and we think he can play. But a guy that a lot of people are now looking at not just being potentially the second running back off the board, but somebody that is going to go a lot higher potentially in the first round than people maybe initially thought. He runs 4.46, a 38-inch vertical, a 10.10 broad, and weighing in at 221 pounds. There's a lot of people looking at McElroy Hampton saying, yeah, we can bring that guy in and he can help our franchise.
I love that kid. You're on the same page, right? Like, you love that guy.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan.
I feel like the running back draft is pretty good this year.
It's as deep as I've ever seen it. I'm just going to be honest with you.
But another example of, man, if McElroy Hampton's there for me at 26, great. I'm not going to go and trade up extra picks to go get him because the drop between him and Jarquez Hunter, which I think there's a pretty considerable gap between the two, probably 3 rounds. But productivity-wise, I might be able to get Jarquez and only use 1 pick on him as opposed to using 2 or 3 on McElroy Hampton. So
Jarquez Hunter ran faster than Hampton did. He ran 4.44.
Were you not surprised by a couple of those times, by the way? Jarquez being one of those. The other one, Montrell Johnson going 4.41.
That was a little surprising. I think that maybe changed some people's thought process on him. Jarquez, 33.5-inch vertical, 10-foot broad, 21 on the bench. He had a good workout, a really solid workout, and now people are going to look at him. And I think who all of this begins to hurt, and I think it actually hurts one of the guys that people say really helped himself, and that would be Travion Henderson. Travion had a great workout, 4.43, 38.5-inch vert, 10.8 broad jump. But you also let's take Rocket Sanders, who I thought had a better workout than I sort of anticipated him to. 36.5-inch broad, 4.46 in the 40. Yeah. Why would you go out and take a Travion Henderson or a Rocket Sanders who have been dinged up almost their entire careers when you have a slew of the other guys that we just mentioned? Yeah. A Donovan Edwards who ran a 4.44. A Quinshon Judkins who at 4.48 probably faster than a lot of people thought he was going to run. Now you got Montrell Johnson at 4.41. An R.J. Harvey who runs 4.04 flat. Braciel Tootin out of Virginia Tech who goes 4.32. There's too much to choose from for me to go get a guy that has an injury history in this draft. And Different types of guys. I mean, you want a speed guy? Okay. You go up there and you get an RJ Harvey or Trevor Etienne. All right, cool. You want a grinder? Well, now Montreal Johnson runs faster than we thought he did. Damian Martinez is sitting there at 4.51. We can go get him. The third round, fourth round, I think is going to be fascinating with running backs in this draft.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those where you really can't go wrong. Will one ultimately end up being better than the others? Possibly. But we don't know that for sure. I think there's a real possibility we could be looking at a scenario where we're going to fast forward 5 years, and you're going to have a guy from that third, fourth round might be the best overall back in this class. It wouldn't shock me. How often have we seen that happen?
Often. And then, you're going to get guys that are just productive. Like we've talked about Woody Marks in the right system. Yeah, he ran 4.54, but you put him in sort of an outside zone scheme, he can find it, and he can get you yards. Ollie Gordon going 4.61. He's going to fall because of that, but you don't think Ollie Gordon can find a way to get yards in the NFL? He's going to get yards. He just might not be your explosive home run hitter. I thought maybe the biggest surprise with the running back group of anything that happened over the weekend was Ulysses Bentley running 4.62.
Oh, you thought it'd be faster?
Well, I mean, he was the Ole Miss speed guy, and Rhett Lashley told me that, he had real juice, and that was the main reason he ended up coming in and winning the job is just because of he was such a home run threat. I did not expect him to be that slow in the 40. No.
Yeah, I mean, I think
not 4.6.
I wasn't that surprised.
Not 4.6.
I never had anybody tell me he was crazy dynamic, elite. He averaged outside of he'd rip off a 60-yarder here or there.
CJ Dupree was almost faster than he was.
Well, CJ Dupree is 30 years old. Watching him run, looking at him run the 40, he looks like does he not look like a 7-year vet? He looks like he's already. Robbie Oots was out there working.
Yeah. Both of them had good workouts, by the way.
Yeah, I thought Dupree ran real well. By the way, I thought it was the track. All things considered, we talked about it a lot last week. Not the times I was anticipating. It was a little slower than I anticipated.
Yeah.
Based on how things have gone these last couple of years.
Well, it was a little slower than anticipated for one individual specifically. We'll discuss that on the other side. First, I want to tell you about your CBD store. The effects of their products, not going to be slow, not going to take their time. They're going to help you right away. Whether you need a better night's sleep, if you need to lose weight, the Trim by Sunmade on the shelves now at the largest brick and mortar CBD retailer in the world. First company to have USDA certified organic oil supplements. So if you're looking for weight loss, you're looking for more sleep, you're looking for better focus throughout the course of the day, your CBD store can help. Your CBD store, first company to have USDA certified organic oil supplements. They have the stamp seal on those products. So go check out one of their 3 locations, Highway 280 by Bailey Brothers, 150 by the Cage in Cleaver, Trustful just off 459, and now downtown at 5 Points. Your CBD store where good health hits home. Was there real movement with this wide receiver group at the Combine? We'll discuss that next on Mac and Cube in the morning. Tuesday, March 4th, 9:38, Jocks 94.5. The track at the Combine, a little bit slower than some thought. Some movement at the wide receiver position. Did that actually take place? We heard the predictions from Isaiah Bond that he was going to set the record at the Combine for the fastest 40. That did not happen as he went 4.39.
He said 4.1 was within striking distance, no?
Oh, it still is, I guess.
We said there was a 0% chance of that happening, and we were right. Let's ride.
Some other receivers that may have really helped themselves. Matthew Golden out of Texas, 4.29, fastest 40 by a wide receiver at this Combine. Dante Thornton Jr. out of Tennessee. Now, if you talk to anybody around that program, they'll tell you that was in him.
Right.
The problem is we haven't seen a lot of catches in him in his college football career. So, nice 40, but not sure how much difference that's going to make as far as the slotting based on the actual production. We knew Aaron Smith was going to run a good time. He's a track guy.
Correct.
So, but once again, the receiver production, the drops, the inconsistency is not going to be there. How much do you think a guy like Keandre Lambert-Smith helped himself going 4.37?
I think it was good, especially, but I kind of knew he was going to run well. That did not surprise me at all. I saw some of the reaction. I was not surprised by that whatsoever. Were you?
No, but I think when you see who he ran better than, that was a little bit surprising. I mean, he ran faster than Isaiah Bond. He ran faster than Dom Lovett.
Right.
Ran faster than Luther Burden. And I think when you see that, and then you see the production, and you see kind of what he does, I think he's, like I said when he came to Auburn, when I watched him at Penn State, I thought he was a B+ across the board.
Yeah.
Like there were no real liabilities with him. And if he adds better speed than anticipated to that, Greg, then he's super valuable to an NFL franchise.
I agree. I think he's a really good player. And I'm real impressed with how he's handled a lot of just his progress as a player. Because, I mean, let's just think a year ago, how often were we talking about what he would potentially look like as a prospect? Now I think you could make a case he's going to go on Friday.
Yeah,
he really might. I don't know if he will, but it's definitely possible.
It's kind of an odd receiver class.
I don't know if odd. I think is fair. I think it's compared to what we've seen these last couple of years, where it's been just stupid, like stupid
multiple
good.
home run guys. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
it's like
like we talked about the production with Dante Thornton, who runs fast. It's lacking. You have guys that are going to go run well, like Aaron Smith. They don't catch the ball well.
Right.
You have guys like Dom Lovett who have been good at times and then kind of disappeared at times. There's a couple like Luther Burdens out there that feel like they are well-rounded, do it all, can come in and be really dangerous right now. Like I think actually Elijah Badger could be one of those guys in the NFL.
Sure.
Just a lot of people just haven't known about him. But then you get down to some guys like Trey Harris, who we love when he's healthy. But we knew he wasn't going to be a super speed guy. But is he going to stay on the field? Theo Weiss can help you down the field, but he's not a burner. And I don't know if he's necessarily a do-it-all wide receiver. Juice Wells has been that at times, but he doesn't go run well. No. Ricky White was maybe sort of your run after the catch guy. He goes and runs over 4.6. So that's why I meant when I said it's kind of an odd class where there's a lot of guys that have maybe one or two things that you really like, but they're really lacking in some other departments. Like how many are just well-rounded, come in, do everything we need you to do receivers are there in this class? I don't think there's a ton of them. And we've seen a couple of those in the last couple draft classes.
Yeah. I mean, and there's been several guys recently that are legitimately can't miss. And that's just not the case this year. Doesn't mean they can't, go and doesn't mean they can't go and be amazing, but they all come with a little bit of downside. I mean, but let's be real. I mean, when you drafted Garrett Wilson, how comfortable were you in knowing he was going to be a guy?
Felt pretty good about it.
Felt real good about it, right? Like, I think on the field.
Yeah, you knew what you were getting.
You knew what you were getting. This year, it's like, is it Emeka Egbuka that guy? I'm not saying he's not. I mean, he's had moments. That's the guy? That's the one? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not that obvious, like, okay, yeah, Marvin Harrison. Perfect. No problem there. He's going to be great. It's just a little different. So I think there's a little more risk involved in the wideout class this year. And I think there's a little more position-specific guys. Like, I think, all right, this guy's a burner. This guy's a big guy. I think it's a little bit more, hey, this guy's a slot guy. Like, Igbuka's a slot player. He's a slot receiver. That's what he's going to be for. And by the way, very valuable position, very good position. He's never going to be a typical Z. Could you create a formation and build a formation for him? Sure. But he's not a guy that's like, all right, that guy's our go-to guy at the X the rest of his career. No, he's Amon-Ra St. Brown. And he's going to be very good, but he's only going to play in the slot.
Yeah. A couple others. Anybody else from another position that really wowed you during Indianapolis that you came away from thinking a little bit differently about? Like maybe a guy who you've kind of poo-pooed on that we've tried to warn people about and tried to get people on who now all of a sudden everybody's like all of a sudden they found this guy and they were the first one to see him. Armand Membu going 4.91 with a 34-inch vert and a 9.7 broad and 31 on the bench at 332. All of a sudden everybody just found Armand Membu over the weekend, Greg.
Amazing.
He was a guy that wait till y'all see the tape on him. Well, we've been trying to tell y'all about the tape. So some of us have seen it.
I think Shamir Dike from Florida went 4.34, near 40-inch vert. He's a guy that I think was constantly overlooked. I mean, even on his own team, he was probably the third most talked about receiver on the team, right?
Yep.
So I think he's a guy that I'm pretty excited about. I was a little surprised. Did you see how much love Tate Ratledge was getting?
It was a lot.
Like, I mean, he really didn't have a good year. I know he was hurt most of the year. I get that. I know he's been a starter at Georgia for a long time. I know he's a safe pick. But, I mean, did you find, like, his combine performance was all world?
I don't take a 4.97 from a guy that's 308 and long and should be a long strider and somewhat made to put up a decent time there. As all of a sudden my opinion's completely changed on him. I mean,
Correct.
I think like you said, is he a safe pick and you know what you're getting? Yes, absolutely. Number one, he's a guard. Number two, I also think that he looks a little bit longer than his arms measured. That would be something that was a slight. I mean, I'm not saying that like he's going to move from round 2 to round 4 because of that, but if you're looking for concerns, that would be a little bit of one. And I mean, I'm not just going to take a broad jump in a 40 on a guy that was inconsistent when he actually did play. And then, like you say, was a little bit banged up and say, okay, I'm moving you up a round and a half. Like it's just, that's not a real thing for me, but he had a nice workout. He helped himself. I don't think there's any doubt. We've talked about this guard class. It's not tremendous. And there are people who are down on Booker after his workout. And
Who's down on Booker?
There are a lot of people that say he was one of the losers of the combine.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, there are a lot of folks. If you go look at a couple winners, losers, he'll show up in a couple of those, and it's
how about just watch the tape?
That feels like it should count, but that's where some folks are.
Let me tell you who I'm not worried about. Tyler Booker.
Tyler Booker.
You're going to tell me you love Ratledge, but you don't like Booker.
I'll tell you this. Tyler Booker could have walked the 40, and I'd have lost not one thing concerned about him. Don't give a damn.
That would actually, walking the 40, he might have gone up in my book. That's a middle finger to the establishment. Don't need it.
No, but just like to put in perspective, his arms are 2.5 inches longer than Ratledge. And we know that these interior defensive linemen are getting more active. They're getting longer and leaner. You're having more guys that are essentially a defensive end in college that are moving down. You think about like those Javon Kinlaw type body types. You're getting more of those playing inside in the NFL.
Yeah.
You're going to need arms to attack those guys, and it helps you. So because he goes out and does 21 on the bench or runs a 5.38 40, could not care. You know how many times I've seen Tyler Booker pull and murder people? A lot. I've seen it often. So I don't care if he ran a 7.7 40. I've seen him do it, and he does everything I need him to do extremely well. So, yeah, he was one of the guys that did he go out there and help himself a ton? How do you help yourself a ton when you're the first guard on the board? I don't know if you can. So he'd still be guard 1 for me in a weaker guard class, and that's the main reason he stays 1 for me is because he plays different than the other guards in this class. The same thing with Will Campbell. Guys that got out there, Will Campbell hurt himself. He ran 4.98, and his broad jump was 9.5. Like, what'd you want him to do? Run a 4.4?
The amount of people that are wetting the bed about the freaking broad jump. I'm like, dude, I understand that it is applicable. I get it. Like, I know that that's a valuable determination or a valuable testing mark that can be helpful as can be when projecting what a guy can do. But last time I checked, how often, and I know it's measure of explosiveness, how often is a guy on the football field going to be standing in a stationary position needing to jump 10 plus feet? I mean, goodness gracious alive, the amount of people wetting their bed about Brady Cook's broad jump. It's like, who cares? Watch him. Can he hit guys that are open? Like, I mean, because if he can't do that, he probably can't play quarterback. I don't care if he jumped 13 feet on the broad jump. It doesn't make a difference.
And the big thing with Will Campbell, too, is the 32-inch arms, 32 and 5/8 they measured, which a lot of folks will tell you that 33 is the standard. If they were 29-inch arms, then I think we'd have a real conversation. But we had the same thing with Jonah Williams. We have the same thing with multiple guys. And I go back to what we kind of said about Tyler Booker. If you look at Will Campbell's schedule this year, he probably went on the run of the most ridiculous edge defenders that he faced week in, week out, over and over and over again, and held his own the majority of the time. Did he have a couple of losses? Yes, he did. But he also faced elite rushers in about 8 of their games this year and handled a lot of them by himself. So at the end of the day, he gets guys blocked, and that's what I care about. So we're going to get a little bit of this every year at the Combine. It is what it is, but fun to watch and fun to get some good takeaways from over the weekend. We'll give you, until the listeners tell us they hate it again, bad box score of the day next on Mac and Cube in the morning. All right, final segment of the show, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Before we get you out of here, we will get to a bad box score of the day here in just a moment. First, tell you about my friends at Game Day Men's Health. If you are feeling on edge, if you're lacking sleep, if you lack energy, Game Day Men's Health wants to help you. Here's how you do it. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Free PSA test, free testosterone test to see if those are the issues that are hurting you. Maybe it's just you need to get a little bit of weight off. They have multiple weight loss programs that they can help you with at Game Day Men's Health. Peptides in stock now. to be able to help you with multiple illnesses, just to make you feel better. That's what they want to do. A holistic approach to health and wellness at Game Day Men's Health, locker room environment. Not going to try to push you into services that you do not need. However, you can save 10% on any service that they offer by mentioning Cube when you walk in the front door. Minimal upfront cost for the programs that they offer at Game Day Men's Health. That's different than everywhere else. So visit GameDayMen'sHealth.com today. All right, bad box score of the day. Quickly, we'll try to roll right into these. I do feel like we have a potential all-timer today.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, it's an eye roll every time that we say it. But the Minnesota North College Itasca, they are the
Vikings.
They are.
Okay. How did you know that?
Rochester Community and Technical College.
They are the Wagons.
No, they're the Raiders.
They're not.
Eagles.
They're the Yellow Jackets. I think that's like a tech thing that just happens there. They just adopt that.
All them techs.
Makes sense.
The Yellow Jackets snuck past the Vikings just barely in women's junior college basketball, 107-26.
Whoa!
Love that.
Your score at the half, 56-16. For Minnesota North, they shot the ball 39 times.
Okay.
In the game, not threes, just shot 39 times.
Okay, that's fine.
They made 8.
Oh, that's not fine.
That's 20% if you're keeping up at home. They did put up 21 threes.
Okay.
How many did they make?
Admirable.
Only 3.
That's it.
Okay.
That's not that bad.
They got
Just
to the
honorable
free throw
discharge.
line 14 times, though.
Okay.
And they
Well, that's
made.
There's the
Okay.
effort. There's the effort.
They made 7.
Oh,
Okay.
that's
Shaq does better.
Now, they did limit the turnovers in this game to just 40.
That's what got them.
If you could stop the music, and I'd like to rewind quickly. They shot 8 of 39 from the floor.
31 misses.
They turned it over 40 times.
Some more turnovers than shots taken in the game.
That doesn't usually lead to a win. What it does lead to is a bad box score today. They were out-rebounded 46-22 in the game.
Okay.
Solid double up.
Rochester, the Yellow Jackets, shot 46 of 84, 8 of 29 from 3. Had, you would imagine with the 40 turnovers, 30 steals in the game. 6 players in double figures for Rochester Community and Technical College.
Oh, boy.
Last night. It was easily an all-timer in my mind. If
That is an
you were to
all-timer.
ask.
That is.
Yeah.
Hey, look at that. Put the word out. We back up.
I don't think you can really debate that
There's
one.
really no pushing back there.
No. Also last night, UC San Diego knocked off Cal State Fullerton 100-55 in men's college basketball. Cal State Fullerton falls to 6-24 on the season. They shot 19 of 51. That's 37%. 6 of 20 from 3. And in comparison, yes, limited the turnovers to just 20.
There we go.
That's big.
UC San Diego last night shot 53% from the floor, 18 of 40 from 3. So, yes, they were also on fire. All right, we're back tomorrow. 3-man front coming at you next, followed by Paul Feinbaum on Jocks 94.5.